Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We want to welcome everyone here to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and the zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear requests for variance and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, to hear conditional use permit requests, and to review appeals from the decision of the staff in the administration of the zoning ordinance, and then to make decisions in such matters. The members of this board are citizens of the City of Des Moines and have been appointed to this board by the City Council. The board members are volunteers and receive no compensation for their public service. I'm going to take a minute here and introduce our board and staff members. On the audience's right is Dave Gare. Next to him is Lynn Carlson. On the audience's left is Cindy Smith. I'm the chair, Mel Pins. This is a 7-member board. We just have 5 of us today. Nathan Blake should be arriving shortly, but we are missing 2 members today. We usually have very, very good attendance here, but once in a while we might have 1 or 2 folks that can't make it. I'll introduce our city staff. On my left is the city's legal counsel representative, Glenna Frank. And here in the front row by the podium, we have Bert Drost, city planner, Eric Lundy, city planner, and our zoning enforcement officer, Sue Ann Donovan. I'm going to take a couple minutes here and give everybody kind of the basic background on how our procedure works. But as we proceed with the hearing, I'll help everybody through the process. First of all, this is an open public meeting. However, it is a formal hearing, subject to the rules of the hearing, which I will present. The meeting is being recorded for video and audio. In fact, it should be recorded live or being presented live right now on the city's cable channel, or you can watch us in reruns at late night if you've got insomnia or other reasons to sit and watch this for 3 hours. Copies of the agenda for today's hearing, as well as the staff recommendations, are available in the trays right outside this door to the room here. So when I'm through with my opening remarks, if you haven't yet grabbed an agenda, feel free to step up and do so. This board is required to base its decision in each case upon the criteria that has been established by law for the type of relief that the applicant seeks. The law applicable to each case has been identified in the written staff report, and if the facts, as determined by this board, demonstrates that the criteria established by law for granting the relief has been satisfied, then the board must grant the relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the requested relief. Each appeal will be announced in order as presented on the agenda. The staff will then first give a brief explanation of the appeal, and any written comments received by the staff prior to the hearing will be distributed to the board or otherwise identified during the staff presentation. The appellant or a representative of the appellant will then be allowed to speak first. They will be allowed up to 10 minutes to present their case for appeal. Anyone else present in support of the requested appeal will then be allowed up to 5 minutes each for their comments. Following that, anyone present in opposition to the appeal will then be allowed up to 5 minutes each to present their comments. The applicant will then be allowed up to 3 minutes for a rebuttal or other closing comments if they request such. All speakers must speak only from the podium here, which is forward and to the left, and begin their presentation by first giving both their name and their address. That address can be your place of residence, if applicable to the case, or your place of business, if you're here in a professional capacity. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law has been satisfied. Speakers are also asked to ensure that they are respectful of time considerations. If necessary, the board chair will limit further comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. The board will then close any further public comment on the agenda item, and the board will immediately deliberate the request and make a decision here today. If your appeal is approved today, we ask that you wait until about mid-next week if you would need to go to the Permit and Development Center if any building permits or other documentation is needed. This allows the decision of this board to be documented and recorded in the form of a decision and order. Any appeal that is approved by this board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of the decision by this board, or such approval shall expire. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda are not planned to be individually discussed and reviewed. They will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report. Unless there's an individual present here in the audience today or a member of this board that requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and separately considered under the public hearing agenda. And I will come back to this in a minute. That'll be the first part of our agenda. And again, I'll help everybody through that. The decisions of this board can only be appealed in the Polk County District Court. So if you believe you've been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the district court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the City Council to change those regulations for future considerations. All material written or otherwise used today as part of any presentation will become a permanent part of the record and will not be returned. So if you want to show us photos or drawings or documents, you'll either need to leave those with us or be prepared to allow us to at least make a sufficient copy of those. Just some quick housekeeping items. We ask that you please avoid any undue conversation in the audience so as to not be disruptive or distracting from the hearing that is in progress. So far, you're doing a great job of that. Thank you. We also please ensure your cell phone ringer has been silenced. Once again, you're doing fine. And if you need to use the restroom, you can leave right through the door here, and on the same level just to the right of the staircase, there are restrooms down the hall. Once the agenda item that you're interested in has been completed, you're welcome to leave the hearing. Otherwise, you can stick around with us till 4:30 or 5 o'clock if you'd really like to. We'll have a 10-minute break in the hearing if needed around 3 or 3:30. So those are my opening comments. But what we'll do now is we'll review the agenda with staff and see if there are any changes to the agenda. So, Mr. Drost, help us out.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Drost, planner for the city. I do have a few changes to today's agenda, beginning with number 17, the appeal at 4105 Hubble Avenue. That one has been withdrawn, so there will not be a public hearing held on that one today. And then I have two items that that staff is moving off of the consent agenda. Number 3 is the item at 3104 Villa Vista Drive. We had a comment card back in opposition, and we also had some communication from the neighborhood association in opposition. So staff is moving number 3 to the discussion portion. And then number 4, there is somebody here to speak against that one today. So staff is moving that one to the discussion portion as well. Okay. And then item number 15 is an appeal at 300 West Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. Staff is recommending that that one be moved to the consent portion of the agenda. Staff has recommended approval of the 2 signs, and we've received no objections. So if there's a motion.
Yeah, I'll just survey the audience here quick. For item number 15, that's related to a signage request at 300 West Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. Is there anybody here in the audience that would be against granting approval for that variance request? If so, just raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, anybody here on the board with a concern? If none, would there be a motion to move item 15 to consent agenda for approval?
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a move by Lynn, second by Cindy to move item 15 to consent, okay? And Bert, did I miss this? Did you mention item 18?
I haven't done that yet.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay, so we move item 15 to consent, and
I need to vote on it.
do we want to vote on consent now then?
Sure,
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I miss your vote on the moving?
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. No, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving item 15 to the consent agenda, then raise your right hand. Okay. All right, those opposed?
That's me.
Those abstaining, or you?
Yeah, I'll
opposition?
abstain.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm not-
so we have 4 to move to consent and 1 abstention. Okay. Should we just address 18 before we?
We can, sure. Number 18
Yeah.
is the appeal at 304 East Walnut. They've requested a variance and an exception to the height that would allow for construction of an 82.5-foot tall building. They've requested that the public hearing be continued to the November 28th meeting. We received a letter yesterday from the East Village Neighborhood Association. The applicant would like a chance to discuss the project with that East Village Neighborhood Association and hopefully, I guess, attempt to get them to support the project rather than oppose it. So
Okay.
they've requested a continuance.
Is there anybody here that has a concern about item 18 and wanted to speak today in opposition to that item? I see that you're here in opposition. If we would continue this to the next meeting, do you have any problem with coming back next month? That may help us understand the issue better all the way around. Okay, all right. Would there be
I'll move to continue.
All right, we got a motion for continuance, second by Cindy. All those in favor to continue item 18 to the next regularly scheduled meeting, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Okay, so we moved item 18 to next month's meeting. So what we'll do now, the way the consent agenda works, and I'll read through all these again. Sir, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm representing item number 15. Do I need to stick around?
Since we've moved item 15 to consent, if you can give me about 2 minutes, we may be able to approve that. So that's what we're going to get to right now. All right. Did you have a question in the front row? No. Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, so with what Bert has proposed for the board's consideration is that we would look at approving items 1 and 2, 5 through 11, and 15 as what we call consent agenda. And I'll read through those. But basically, we'd be approving the requested appeals subject to the staff recommendations in the report. So even if we would say yes, and we don't listen to the case directly, you still might have to meet some of the staff's condition. It's not an entire free ride. So I'm going to read through those items that are proposed to be on the consent agenda. If you have any concern about one of those items, just raise your hand when I mention that number, and then we'll move it to the regular hearing if you then want to be heard with your concerns. So item 1 was a special permit request at 5200 Park Avenue. Is there anybody here in opposition to granting approval for item 1? Okay, seeing none. Item 2 was a special permit request, basically at the Iowa Cubs at One Line Drive. Item 2, any concerns? Seeing none. Item 5 is an exception and variance request at 2400 William Street. Anybody here in opposition to item 5? Seeing none. Item 6 is an exception request at 1345 7th Street. No hands with concern there. Okay. Item 7, an exception request at 215 East 3rd. Going once, going twice. Okay. Item 8, an exception request at 2800 2nd Avenue. Any objections to that one? Seeing none. Item 9 is a special permit request related to Des Moines Public Schools at 300 East County Line Road. No concerns there. Item 10, a special permit request at a local place of worship at 5711 Southwest 9th Street. Any concerns with that one? Seeing none. Item 11, an exception request, the vicinity of 1100 7th Street. And then item 15, that is a variance request, again, at 300 West Martin Luther King Parkway. If the audience has no concerns with those, are there any concerns from the board with any of those items? If none, would there be a motion from the board to grant the requested variances, appeals, and considerations on items 1, 2, 5 through 11, and 15?
I'll move.
Moved by Cindy,
I'll second.
second by Dave. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda approvals, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. So if you were here for items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 15, you've been granted approval for those. And about mid-next week, you'll get a copy of that decision and order in writing, granting those approvals to you. So thank you for coming in. And then what we'll do here in a moment is we'll proceed then with those items on the regular portion of the agenda. 3. Cool. Thanks for the reminder. Always good. Right, making sure I'm on track. Okay, so what we'll be doing here to start off our agenda for case presentations, we'll start with item 3, since that had been removed from the consent agenda. That's an exception request at 3104 Villa Vista Drive. And Mr. Eric Lundy will give our presentation to start us off.
Before we get started, though, did you want to ask?
Oh, yes.
Since there's only 5 members present.
Yes, we discussed this before the meeting. So, always something interesting here at Zoning Board of Adjustment. This is a 7-member board. In any regard, it always takes 4 members of this board to vote for approval of any variance or exception or any special permit. So it's not just a simple majority of the 5 present. It always has to be at least 4 members have to vote. So in a case like today, we have 5 members present. So that means you've got to convince 4 people that you've got justified reasoning of why we should grant your variance. So trying to get 4 to 1. If you're in the World Series, maybe that's something you can do pretty easily. We'll see. But for this case, if you feel that you would rather defer to next month to hopefully have more than 5 members present, so that majority could be a little larger or the margin less narrow, you're welcome to ask for a continuance to next month. The conundrum with that is I can't necessarily guarantee how many members we will have here next month. So sometimes we have, most of the time, we have good dedicated board members, and we'll have 7 of us here. Sometimes there's only 6. Once in a while, we have just 5. So if you feel like you would rather have more eyes and ears for your presentation today to consider granting approval to you, you're welcome to defer this to next month. Again, if you think you got a good case and can give it a good shot and convince 4 out of 5 of us, then you're welcome to stick around and we'll hear your case. So with those kind of odds, is there anybody that wants to defer to next month? If so, you can kind of raise your hand. If it's something you want to ponder for a few minutes, if you're not up to bat here right away, you can sit and ruminate on it. But with what I just mentioned, is there anybody who would rather wait till next month? You spent the time to come down here, so you probably want to just hear it forward. Okay. If anybody would change their mind before we get to your case today, feel free to raise your hand. So, okay. Well, if that's good enough, then we'll go ahead and begin then with item 3.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this item is in the Highland Park neighborhood at the corner of Villa Vista Drive and Richmond Avenue. They're asking to have a garage that would be 993.6 square feet in area within their rear yard. That is over the calculated amount they would be entitled to by right, by 289.6 square feet over the calculated amount which they could have, which is 704 square feet. This is the location on the map. This is the former Meyer Hall property to the east over here. This is on the corner, on the northwest corner of the intersection. And this is the, looking at the house from the east, so the front entrance is oriented towards Villa Vista Drive. It's essentially the same view. That's looking at it at an angle so you can see up the street. This is a sketch that was provided with the application that shows how they want to place the garage on the property with a separate driveway. They would still have a driveway in this location if they get what they have asked for, to a carport that's on the side of the house. So they would have 2 separate driveways in that event. Staff looked at this in terms of the level of appeal. Our biggest concern is making sure that the materials of any garage of that size are compatible with the primary dwelling. So we did recommend in favor of the exception being requested. And we believe that the existing placement of the house being on a corner lot presented some practical difficulty for them to achieve the desired result, which was the garage of that size for their purposes. We do want to make sure that it is constructed with materials that are compatible with the existing dwelling. It's a brick house, but typically on brick houses, the accessory structures would have had materials that would be found in the neighborhood, such as horizontal lap siding and asphalt shingles. So we want to make sure that that garage is constructed in that fashion. We want to make sure that it doesn't exceed the 17-foot height. They have not asked to appeal that provision, so they need to ensure that they have a roof structure that would not exceed a ridge at the 17 feet in height. We want to make sure that they meet all applicable building codes for any type of foundation system that would be required. That's through the Permit and Development Center. We want a provision that it won't be used as any type of a dwelling unit or bedroom for the property. And then any accessory structure would not be used for a home-based business unless they were taken under further consideration in the future by the Board of Adjustment. So those are the 5 conditions we recommend. We did get 1 in opposition, 2 in favor, and then we also had the card from the Highland Park Association that was in opposition as well, that got circulated around to the board. Are there any questions?
Do you have any concerns about the second curb cut?
In general, there isn't a restriction on residential property until it exceeds that percentage of the front yard. So as long as, this being a residential property, it's not a matter of concern. If this was a commercial drive entrance, it would be a lot different. But the number of trips that we would expect out of a residential driveway is fairly minimal and wouldn't be impacted by that separation. So certainly if you thought that was a character issue, you could, consider that in granting any relief.
Other questions for Eric? Brief one I'd have, Eric. There was some comment card about this being a rental property. I can't remember if you had referenced that. I don't know if that's relevant
We
or not.
usually don't
but-
reference that because it isn't, zoning doesn't distinguish whether it's rental versus
Right.
ownership in terms of its tenure. So I don't know if I could even verify that without
But if,
checking the tide mark.
if it would be a rental property, do we get into concerns? Is this necessary for the use of the residence as a rental property? Or if we had other storage going on there that wasn't related to the primary use, could we then have a zoning issue?
Certainly, you could have a zoning issue with that, and
Mm-hmm.
from an enforcement standpoint, that's going to be enforcement's
Right.
trying to determine, is that accessory storage for the use, or is it being
Yeah.
used for some commercial storage for other
Okay.
properties or something of that? I mean, there's always that potential.
Yeah. I know we had a case a few months ago, somewhat similar, where there was a concern that, yes, it was a rental property and the owner wanted to just store vehicles in it, but that was determined to then be a non-use of the property by the resident.
If you wanted to make it more discoverable for somebody, you could certainly tack that on as a condition, that it should only be used as accessory for this,
Okay.
the single-family dwelling use of this property, even though that's already technically a standard.
Yeah. And I don't know that I want to make a big deal
Yeah.
of it, but Sue Ann, did you have anything you wanted to add to that from staff's perspective in the presentation?
Chair, members of the board, it is a rental property. It has a certificate through November of this year.
Okay.
So from the rental perspective, we want anything on that property to be used only by the tenant, not for storage of
Okay.
landlord's vehicles or materials.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And
Cindy?
Mr. Chair, there was another card indicating or implying that this new garage structure was the same size or larger than the house that's on the property. And I don't really know what the size difference would be, but is it comparable, close to, bigger than?
Well, I mean, you could see from the footprint perspective, and they're both one-story buildings. This also includes the carport area. So I
So
mean, if
it-
I cover that up, it's fairly, it's probably just slightly subordinate to the total footprint area.
To the best of your knowledge, do you feel that's like 30 scale, 1 inch equals 30 feet? You think that's fairly accurate for how they did their sketch?
Yeah, I think they drew it
Okay.
to scale, yes.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Okay, so the carport, right, you said it's a carport on the end right now, not a garage? I really couldn't tell from the pictures. It went by kind of quick for me.
Let's go back so you can see this extending off of,
Okay, so it's a carport.
get more head on, that might help you out. It's hard to see there here because there's another garage on the property to the west in the background. But, this is the carport cover here.
Okay.
So that would be reflected on that footprint of the sketch here in this area. So the original foundation of the home is this rectangle. And again, if you're trying to make a comparison, that's fairly well to scale. I would say there's a slight subordinate area, but
Okay, we're close.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. Okay, so the way the hearing works now, the applicant, the person requesting the larger size garage, they can step up and we can give them 10 minutes to present their appeal. So, is the person related to Easton Properties LLC here and would like to give their presentation? Is that you, sir? Yes, it is. Then you can step right up to the podium there. And to get started, we'll just need your name and address.
My name's Chris Harvey,
Okay?
and my address is 4811 Southeast 104th Street, Runnels, Iowa.
Okay.
That's 50237.
All right. Well, Chris, you got up to 10 minutes to tell us why you want to build your garage.
Okay. We can address the rental property right from the beginning. My wife and I, we just sold our home at that address, and we are planning on moving into this property. And as far as the second use of storage or having anything other than the parked cars or some of our own personal belongings, that'll be the primary use of that building. We have a son that'll be with us, so we need another parking spot. I'll have to have a parking spot. And then, of course, my wife will be parking at the outside of the building. I drive a extended cab, or a Super Duty Ford pickup, 4-door, long box. So I need as big a garage as I can get with snowplow on the front of it. When I went down to the building department, we went over it and talked about the different sizes of the structure and things like that, and talked to the gentleman down there, and they felt that this fit a good criteria for being in that position for the neighborhood, and they thought that it would be a good place to have an application for this building.
Okay. Well, we take a few questions from the board?
As many questions as you want to take.
All right.
Are you going to maintain that carport
I do
then?
apologize. My ears are kind of stuffed up.
Are you going to maintain the carport area then and not put a garage there and leave the covering?
The carport will stay there, and that's where my wife will be parked. And then the new structure will have 2 doors in it.
As staff has stated, there may not be a requirement that you can't have a secondary drive if it meets engineering requirements.
I understand.
But if we were inclined to approve this kind of as a little bit of a trade-off, would you be amenable to maybe not having the second driveway and tying it into your existing drive? Because I don't see any other houses in the vicinity that have double drives coming out to the same street or at all.
Well, we discussed that, and with that being said, first off, in that area, to get over to that new building, we would surpass the 20-foot approach length.
Okay.
Therefore, we'd have a problem there. And then the gentleman helping me put this down on paper said that the second approach would not be any problem whatsoever, because if we build a 720 square foot building, it would be allowable without coming to this meeting.
That's correct, it would be.
So he and I discussed it, and I need as much space as I can get. And I guess we just came to the conclusion that we would.
Okay, gotcha. All right, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none. You can go ahead and sit down, sir. So, see how easy this is, at least to give your testimony. Anybody else here to speak in support of the applicant? Okay, is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the applicant? Okay. You can decide who wants to go first. And the way this works for opposition, you've got up to 5 minutes to present your comments. And we will just need your name and address to get started.
My name is Eleanor Hawkins, and I live at 1525 East Tiffin Avenue, 50316.
Okay.
And I wrote this before I heard all the comments.
Okay.
Chairman and members of the City Zoning Board of Adjustments, I have lived in the development of Bobby's Place for over 57 years. I feel a building of 36 feet by 27.6, which is 993.6 square feet, does not fit in our neighborhood of an R160, nice, small brick homes. The house at 3104 Villa Vista Drive is only 912 square feet, so it's smaller than the garage that they want to put up there. And this has been a rental property for some time and unoccupied for a few months. So I don't understand, and now I do, why a building of this size is needed on an unoccupied rental property. I have a petition of the neighbors in the development that do not want the zoning changed. Also, some pictures showing the structure I would consider to be in the side yard, not in the backyard. There were many times when the lawn was not mowed for weeks, and even dandelions have gone to seed. Also, there was a shed that was about to fall down that was an eyesore to our neighborhood. Mr. Harvey displayed he has not been a good neighbor to us, and also in his business transactions. Please carefully consider our request. This should not be approved. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Eleanor. Anybody have any questions for Eleanor?
Was she going to share her pictures?
Oh, do you have some pictures? Yeah. Bert will help you put those
I have
out
some
there.
pictures, too. There's the pictures, and here's the petition.
Okay.
Did you want to explain the pictures or?
Well, it just shows in the pictures what she also had in his pictures, that shows that that is not the backyard, it's the side yard.
Sure.
So it like you saw, it saw two driveways, which is not anything in our neighborhood. It just doesn't fit. And the neighbors don't want it.
Okay. Okay. All right. And Bert, can you, appreciate you passing that around so we can take a peek at it. Okay, is there anybody else here who wishes to speak in opposition?
Hi, my name is Marilyn Brownell, and I live at 1520 East Tiffin Avenue.
Okay.
I've lived there for 46 years, but I was born, well, not born, but I was raised at 1513 Henderson. So I just moved over one street, so I've actually lived in the neighborhood all my life. And I'm very dead set against building this big building, and also the extra drive. I think the drive's going to create a lot of problems, backing out for one thing, creating problems for the other people on the other side of Villa Vista when they're backing out, or several people on the other side of Villa Vista. And as it being when it was rental property, there was quite a bit of problems with, one time it was a daycare and the kids were just all over the place. And people backing out had a lot of problems with that part, and they did get evicted out of there for that. So Yeah, one thing the neighbors are worried about is if, apparently he's a construction owner, and they're worried about him putting construction equipment in the garage. If that's what the garage is really all about, if he's gonna be storing construction equipment in there. And, the follow-up part, is he really gonna live in the house himself, or is it still gonna be a rental property? And he's gonna store the construction equipment in the garage. So that's our concern.
Okay.
So
All right. Thank you,
very
Marilyn.
much.
Appreciate you
thank
coming down today. Anybody else here to speak in opposition? Going once, going twice. Okay. Seeing none, we'll come back to the applicant in a second, but do we have any further questions for staff? If none, what we can do, Chris?
I have a quick
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, Nathan.
So there was a discussion of a cap on the amount of driveway leading to a structure or something like that. Is it 20 feet?
25% of the front yard area.
Oh, it's just a volume or like square footage. It's not a distance.
Right. Now, I mean, in general, they don't permit multiple approaches, but that's not in the zoning ordinance. I mean, that's something that they generally do in building
Engineering
any
or
house
whatever.
anywhere.
Yeah.
They try not to get multiple approaches on the same property, but
Right.
this has a lot of frontage, being a corner lot, so,
Nathan, it would probably be a question for the applicant, but when
Yeah.
he's discussed that, I assumed what he meant was rather than have the driveway and then it jutting out.
Yeah.
But he asked about having it the approach go all the way to encompass
Oh.
all of that.
Okay.
So again, that's a question for
yeah,
them.
there's a
but that was
limit
what
on the
I-
width of the approach, of a single
Yeah, yeah.
approach, yes.
Okay.
So they won't be able to exceed, I don't think they can exceed 30 feet for any
Right.
width of any approach.
Okay.
But a
Even if they flare a driveway out wider than that for whatever reason, their residential approach would be limited to it.
But a single approach can be up to, I can't remember what it is, 16 or 18 foot wide for like a double car garage or
Yeah.
whatever the maximum width is.
So,
Okay.
so, if they slid the garage closer, they could conceivably operate off of a single approach. They would have to modify this existing approach.
Got
'cause
it.
it's certainly not that wide, but, and then they would flare it out to accommodate getting into all the overhead doors for the garage.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Does that work, Nathan?
Yep,
We
thanks.
good? Okay. All right. So, Chris, how this works, since there were some folks that spoke in opposition, you kind of get last say in the case. So if you want to add anything else, you've got up to 3 minutes for any closing remarks.
Okay. First off, we don't have a rear yard. We have a side yard, so we don't have the option of putting up a building in the rear yard. I do own a construction company. I'm a new home builder, but I also have 60 acres of office and work and storage where all my heavy equipment is, all of my items for construction work. I didn't live there when it was a daycare and didn't have anything to do with that. And I appreciate their concerns of how long they've lived in the area and how beautiful the area is. All I want to do is make a nice garage and live in the house. Now, I'm not going to live there forever. 4 or 5 years probably. My son graduated from Grandview, which kind of got us back down in the area. I grew up over off of Sheridan. 2300 East Sheridan to be exact is where I was raised. Now my daughter is playing tennis for the Vikings over there. I've got a new grandbaby. They live on Sampson Street, just 2 blocks away. So we're kind of wanting we're downsizing to this house. That's why we sold our house. And we're kind of wanting to be close to my daughter and my new granddaughter. And we're going to try to make it fit what we need for the time being until my other son, that's a junior in high school, gets out of high school, potentially goes to Grandview, because that seems to be the track record right now. We're just trying to make it fit, and that's what we need to make it fit. As far as the approach goes, if it's like any of the other cities, you've got 16 feet that's allowable at the sidewalk, and you're allowed to go out 3 feet from each side to the curb. Now, it makes it more drastic or less drastic by the difference in the parking room. And I have never measured this one, but I believe it's 12 feet. So if we get into where we can't exceed that 20 foot, it can't work for us at that point. The driveway and the new building work according to the city on the other side of that big tree where you can see the branches, with the approach being there, and it meets all the restrictions. So I guess I'm just asking for the other 200 square feet of the building, instead of coming back and going with the 720 square feet that meets all of the criteria for everything that we need to do it without the adjustment.
Okay, all right.
It will be aesthetically pleasing. I know the neighbors will be happy with it when we're done. I know we'll be good neighbors, so I guess I don't know if there's anything else. Is there any other questions for me?
Any other questions for Chris? Okay, all right. All right, thanks for your wrap-up. Okay, what we'll do then is close the public portion of the hearing now, and the board will deliberate, so we'll have our own brief discussion here. Any thoughts from the members? Eric, did you have something you wanted to add?
Two points of clarification.
Yes, please do.
One, their earning is 704 square feet, not 720.
Right, as you have
Okay.
here in the appeal.
And then
right.
the other point is, what's being called a side yard in this case is really a rear yard based on the way the zoning ordinance
I understand, right.
views the property. So the actual only side yard they have is behind the house
Right,
to the west.
right, right. You're saying it's front yard.
Well,
Because
there's
I
front
think you
yard
said-
and rear yard as well. Yeah.
Right, right. The rear yard is behind the house in this case.
The rear yard is to your right in the picture.
It is, okay, so that does
And
count.
So is
Okay.
some of the front yard because it's a
Right,
corner.
yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Okay, all right, if that's clear for everybody. So, thoughts amongst the board?
I have a little bit of a hard problem with building a garage larger than the house.
Okay,
Just have a hard time getting over that.
okay. Yep. Anyone else?
I thought he made his case, and I understand the neighbor's concerns, but I think I think all of the rental property things are irrelevant.
Yep.
So it's a big spot, but he has a reasonable rationale. So I'd be in favor of granting it.
I agree with you. It's a small footprint for a house, so. Sounds like he's got a big truck and he needs some space, so I think it's justified.
Cindy?
I guess I'll move staff.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of granting the requested relief, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You guys had a motion so quick, but that's okay, it's going to pass. I just think it's a little big. All right, so motion passes 4-1, so you got your approval. The decision and order will come to you by next week. Wait for that, and then you can go down to permit and development and pull your permits for the actual construction. Okay? All right, you're welcome. And for those of you that came down to speak in opposition, we appreciate you coming down, listening to your concerns, and we appreciate all your support living in the neighborhood for 45, 55 plus years. Thank you very much. Okay, that'll bring us to item number 4. That's an exception request in the vicinity of 932 Leland Avenue.
And the first thing I want to point out is you do have a corrected staff report in front of you, hopefully.
Okay, let's take a look. The complete staff report? Oh, okay.
Here's a separate page, it was up.
Is this an extra or what?
Yeah.
He didn't give us?
So just to go over that quickly, what changed
On here.
was the applicable requirements, and if you can see the underlined provisions, the lot width provision was put in your applicable requirements rather than the lot area provisions in R160. So that these two underlined sections were added into the staff report. The other thing was the original appeal for exception on the rear yard referenced a 35-foot rear yard setback requirement. It's actually a 30-foot setback requirement as shown in the applicables under number 5, which was already in the staff report. So.
Okay. All right.
The subject property is, you can't really see it on this aerial, but Southwest 9th is about where my pen is. Running north-south. Army Post is about where my pen is, right here. So this is that little block at
Sure.
the corner of Army Post and Southwest 9th. This is the northwest corner of that block on the intersection where Leland and Southwest 10th come together. Currently, there's two parcels here. They're separately owned at this time, and they're both on the list of appellants. It's the Fritzler Family Enterprises owns one, and CAM Property Holdings LLC owns the other.
So you
At
and I
this
can
time,
split this one. Okay.
They would have to replat this to get it changed under the way they're requesting it. Currently, there's a single-family dwelling on this property that is oriented to the north towards Leland. This is vacant. There was a detached garage that straddled that slightly. It's been removed. Show you some photos here quick as we move around the property. My fingers are dry. Can't get anything separated. So this is looking at it from the Leland perspective, a little bit towards the southwest. So you can see Southwest 10th passing in the mid-ground there. This is the front of the house. The actual door is oriented to the east off the bump out on the front of the house. I'm not sure if that's the historic arrangement. Under current single-family dwelling standards, we wouldn't permit that with a new dwelling. This is moving around the side of the house. Actually, I'll show you the other vacant lot to the east, looking south from Leland. Then moving around the house, this is the west side of the existing house towards Southwest 10th. Then looking into the back towards this would be the proposed location of another dwelling that would face Southwest 10th. The applicant provided a layout of how they would propose this. The brown are the existing structures. So they would redivide the lots so that the narrower side, slightly narrower, would face Southwest 10th Street. I believe they're 77 and 75, giving a little more to the corner. The existing house would continue to set as it exists. They would have another garage. They're providing for locations for detached garages on both parcels to ensure that each home could have a garage. So the relief that we're talking about here is the total area of these is both below the 7,500 necessary. So this is 7,045 square feet on the corner lot. This is 6,827 square feet on the interior lot. Then they would also need relief of the rear yard for this house that they're proposing. They're showing a 20-foot setback here. At the rear, that's required to be 30, so they would need relief of 10 feet on that, I believe, based on the way it's shown. That might actually be another correction. Then the other point of relief would be the front yard area on this side. Because this, even though this is an existing building, the new house would need to meet the front yard setback. And in order to have the depth they want to go as close as 25 feet. And you can see that it's kind of hard to read, but there's a dimension of 25 feet here. But it wouldn't actually be any closer than the west wall of the existing house, so it would not project. I'm going to see if, just to show you how it would compare to the existing houses on the west. Southwest 10th kind of takes a little jog here, and these homes are actually fairly close there.
And Eric, just briefly, with that site plan you had shown for the proposed location and footprint of the house, what's the general square footage of the proposed house? Do they?
They haven't marked them with square
Okay.
footage, the dimensions.
Yeah, I can't quite read those.
I might need to get under some light here to do that. I didn't bring my reading glasses. They're showing it at about 40 by 28.
So about 1,200 plus
Yeah.
square feet then,
So,
okay.
Yeah, fairly decent size.
Right,
for
and
that.
a single-family home is what's
And
proposed,
that
or
that's
single-story?
That's comparable or exceeds
Sure.
what's in the area.
Okay,
You know, staff understands. The other thing I should point out is that you have a very similar condition just across the street on the opposite side
right,
with how the lots are laid out. In fact, these are actually even smaller.
Right.
They don't have as much north-south dimension.
Okay.
So a similar situation where that depth is maybe less on the lot.
And the applicant is not asking for any side yard exceptions on where they would border the existing
No,
property
so
to the
they've
south, are
provided
they?
for a lot line that affords the proper side yard for the existing house, and then they would meet, they're demonstrating that they would meet I think they're even showing.
Yeah, show us that again,
yeah,
because
17
yeah.
think 17 feet, or 12 feet from the south, so that's
Okay.
more than the normal, which would be a minimum of 7
7
on
and-
one side, yeah.
Right, okay,
And then 30, almost 35 feet from the existing house property.
because by right, they could combine the lots, clear the existing house, or even build a garage that would be a lot closer to the southern property line than what's proposed. Is that right? Theoretically.
Yeah, they could go to 7
All
feet.
right. So is that
and still
12
not
or
even seek
17?
relief. Right. So they're not seeking any
Okay.
relief for side yards.
Right.
Again, because the semantics of what's front yard and
Right.
side yard, front yard on this corner, you know, what's behind the house
Yeah, I'm
is
tracking.
considered a side yard,
Right,
not a rear yard even. So
Okay.
that seems tight for the back of a house.
uh-huh,
With the house being oriented to the north, but it
The
meets the
existing.
side yard requirement for
Okay.
how the lot is, because the narrower dimension is towards southwest 10th.
yeah. My primary concern would be existing owners to the south and how close it would be to them. And that looks like 12 feet at least from the property line.
Yes, and then
Okay.
if you look at their proximity, they're also fairly distant from,
Right,
they have a fairly wide side yard as well, so.
okay.
Eric, based on the site plan or situation plan, are you saying that the third exception listed on the agenda should be 10 feet less than the minimum required 30-foot rear yard setback rather than 15 feet?
Yes, so that was probably something, because they're showing it at 20, so if the standard is 30, they would need relief of 10.
Okay, so if the board were to grant relief today, that should be for 10 feet?
Yeah, when we fixed the 30, we should have also fixed the 15 to 10.
Okay.
All righty. All right, any questions, or Eric, anything else you
I
want to
was
add?
going to point out, there's 9 conditions we're recommending, and they're primarily about the type of dwelling and the character of the dwelling that would be constructed on the remaining parcel. We want to make sure that it's in compliance with the design, and because they did not provide us with specific design for the house. So we want to make sure that our planning administrator looks at this and verifies that it meets what the board's intentions are. We want to make sure that it has a full basement. We want to make sure that it has the provision of a garage in the rear yard. Now, it's showing one in the side yard. I think that could be modified if you're comfortable with where they're placing it. In both cases, they're technically within the side yard, as shown. It is behind the front of the house, which I think is the intent of that condition. And we want to make sure it's large enough for 1 parking space and 80 square feet of storage. A paved driveway for the access to the garage. Again, normally we would require the front yard to be paved regardless, but if they're pulling the garage back further, we would want that paved all the way to the garage. Any dwelling shall have exterior materials of masonry, brick, or stone, vinyl of no less than 42 mil thickness, cedar, cement, fiberboard, or other composite materials generally equal in quality to cement fiberboard as approved by the city's planning administrator. And that really is a list of materials that we have accepted for use for giving tax abatement. There are some engineered wood products that fall into that list as well, without getting exhaustive on what we allow. Any dwelling shall be constructed with front porch of not less than 60 square feet, or at least 1/3 of the front facade shall be clad with stone or brick masonry. Again, we want the front to appear interesting to the street, as with the traditional character of the neighborhood. Any dwelling constructed shall have window and door trim on all facades that is a minimum of 4 inches wide. Any dwelling constructed shall include a roof covered with architectural profile asphalt-type shingles or cedar shakes. We want to prohibit any 3-tab standard shingles. Any dwelling and/or accessory structure shall be constructed in compliance with the building codes with issuance of all permits required by the Permit and Development Center. And we want to make sure that any modified lot configuration is in accordance with a plat instrument approved by the city's Permit and Development Center and recorded with Polk County.
All right. Questions for Eric?
Yeah, could you go back to the overhead of the whole area?
The aerial?
Yeah. Is this one of those situations where you average out the setbacks from all of the neighbors to determine the front yard setback?
So the answer to that is yes. And without a calculation, we went with the district standard. So we would calculate that with the homes oriented towards Southwest 10th to the first 200 feet to the south. I don't know if that includes 1, 2, or 3 parcels. So that would be measured as an average. So it's possible that that relief
Might not be needed.
necessary.
And then I also just wanted, could you pull out a little bit more on the Zoom? I mean, you pointed to the 2.
So I don't know where 200 feet ends. I would think it doesn't go as far as
Yeah.
the third one to the south, but possibly the third one, maybe just these 2. And what that measurement is, they would have to comply with the average. So it's possible that that relief wouldn't be necessary. What they do lose is any lot of record flexibilities, but that averaging is not part of the lot of record provisions.
Okay. Thank you. If you zoom out, if Bert was paying attention. So you pointed to the 2 properties across the street, but those are basically unique in this entire aerial.
In the aerial area that it is, we do have some narrower or shallower depths here. These are even narrower in their width.
Yeah.
If you look around the greater neighborhood area, a lot of irregular lot situations where lots were fit in the middle of blocks with shallow depths. It's this area of the south side is very unique in that you have hardly any consistent lot pattern, to be honest with you. So it's hard to say it doesn't meet the lot pattern, but it might be also hard to argue that it's completely within the character of the lot pattern of the neighborhood too. So
Yeah,
I just merely
I guess,
wanted to point out that just across the street,
yeah,
direct comparison, two lots that are essentially done in the same fashion.
yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else for Eric? Okay, thank you, Eric. All right, applicant. See, he's ready to go. He knows how this works now. All right, we just need your name, address, and you got up to 10 minutes.
My name is Caleb Fritzler. I reside at 5538 Southwest 15th Street in Des Moines. I appreciate the opportunity to show another house that we're doing. This would be our 11th project, assuming it is approved. We have 2 on the market and 2 that are under construction that were approved, I believe, earlier this spring. So thank you for that. This is a house that will be a rental property, 932 Leland. My business partner is actually covering the rental inspection. We have it today at 2 o'clock, so we'll have a tenant moving in. And then hoping to then build a house on the extra space that is to the south. Originally looking at this, I was kind of excited because the lot to the east is a lot of record. And so that's why they're titled in 2 different LLCs. One LLC is our construction builder company, and then the other one is our rental property company. And got the site plan, and the southeast corner, approximately about 2 feet of it, are caught on that east lot, which then I had to scramble and reconfigure it how we're proposing it. Based upon past experience with the board, I know that you guys grant heavy weight on does this conform to the neighborhood. I looked straight to the west, and like the gentleman said, the lot to the west, the 2 lots to the west are configured exactly like this, and they're actually smaller than the proposed lots that we're proposing. So I think everything fits and conforms to the neighborhood the best of our ability. The staff recommendations they're identical to previous recommendations that we've been faced with, so I have no issues with building the house according to these recommendations. And so that I really don't have too much else to add. Oh, one comment on the square footage. It was mentioned 1,200. It's actually just short of that. It's 1,181 square feet. It'll be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
And is that going to be a house that you are going to sell for a homeowner? That's
Yes,
not
we
going to
will
be a
sell
rental?
that one. Yeah, we don't hold the new builds. Yeah, we will sell that one.
All right. Okay, any other questions for Caleb? Okay. All right. And Caleb, I can't recall seeing that you had like a profile or elevation showing kind of what the house style would be. Do you have anything like that?
Actually, we just started switching to the hardy plank siding.
Yep.
Instead of vinyl.
Yep.
We're even doing that on our remodels. We just started doing that.
I mean, is bungalow, little Cape Cod style?
Oh, it'll be a
what?
bungalow, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. All
It'll
right.
have a little bit of a bump out on the front porch. It's really
Sure.
hard to tell from that site plan, but
Okay.
it's a little bit of a bump out on the front. So you'll walk into the front door and you'll have not an enclosed porch, but an open porch, and then walk into the house.
Okay. All righty. Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Okay, anybody here to speak in support of the applicant's request? We always start there. Okay. Seeing none, anybody to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? Whoever would like to step up first can do so. Good afternoon, welcome.
My name is Tammy Green, and I live at 6217 Southwest 10th Street in Des Moines. I am the property that is south of the proposed changes that are being requested.
I'm gonna bend the microphone towards you.
Oh, please, now. And I'm here today. This is new for me. Caleb is very experienced and skilled with this because this is his livelihood. He does this for a living. He flips houses and he has several rentals. For me, this is my forever home. I have been there 25 years. And when I bought that property, the reason I bought the property was the buffers that I had around me, because the lots were large and the houses were set in a way that I have literally a buffer all the way around my entire property. And the purpose of that is instead of moving to the country where I had a little space, I found a place in Des Moines that I could get that with. It is a one-block street, and it really doesn't jog over, as I heard the gentleman state. It's a straight street. It's a one-block street. At the Army Post end, it is extremely difficult to get out onto the road. So we count on Leland, that corner. Us that live there, we go that way to get out. Where he's proposing to put a house concerns me greatly. In fact, it troubles me deeply because it does infringe, even though it's property that he has now purchased and his other entity has purchased the other lot. It bothers me because I went and took photos, and before I took photos, I looked. I looked out my windows, I looked out my yard, I walked around my yard. And literally, it takes away what I bought. So, having said that, what I would like to show, I need my glasses to read my note.
You can just set them right on top of it.
Okay, so what I would like to show is, this is the back of the house at 932 Leland. And the fence top that you see there, that is my chain link fence. And I took that from the middle of what they call the vacant lot, which I own. That picture is there, and when you look at that picture and then you envision a house and two garages, it takes away what I feel is my privacy. It takes away my space, even though I don't own that piece of land. It takes that away from me. It also blocks our view. We live in a neighborhood that has had a lot of drug houses. So, when I say drug houses, I'm going over here to where the gentleman pointed out, these are really small lots. They are. They're rental properties, and we've dealt with meth heads forever. They finally got them out. When he compares these two properties as being smaller than what he's projecting that he'd like to do, those were there when I moved in. You know, when I bought it, if you look at the rest of the lots that are in that area, they're not as small as the projection's trying to lead to. And so these are important things to me because I have one home. I can't afford to go buy another property and move to get what I bought 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. I just can't. I'm stuck there. That's me forever. Okay. And what concerns me is that I lose, in my opinion, everything I went for. And I did do some pictures. He showed a picture of the driveway and where the proposed house is. And if you look, the fence, you can't even see it good in that one. Let me go here. If you look right now, we have a telephone pole and the neighbors across the street's mailboxes. This is my fence. Mm-hmm. This is the back fence. It's hard to picture that house and a garage and then a second garage on the Leland side of the property, if they get their grant, is not going to impede vision. And we as neighbors on Southwest 10th, we want to see, we've got the Fort Des Moines facility not far from us. We've got the homeless shelter, and we have a home hidden somewhere in there that is for drug addicts. It's to help them. It's not that it's a bad place for drug addicts. But we have those people come up our street all the time and around Leland. We like to see them coming. We watch them scope our properties. That will all be blocked, and it might not mean anything to anybody but us. I've been there 25 years. The majority of, I know of one house on Southwest 10th that's a rental. We're all homeowners there. In addition, what we have on the corner of Southwest 10th and Leland, if you look at this, and I tried to make notes in here to kind of give an idea, but this corner house at Southwest 10th and Leland, that gentleman has a tree business. And both corners, and I've complained and we've called the police on this, We have boom trucks, and we have big trucks with trailers loaded high in the air with.
Oh, you
brush.
do, huh? Well, we'll
Yes.
look into that.
We have that, and that impedes vision anyway. Then when you think about that you live there and construction time to change things and build these things, I feel we'll lose total use of that corner for a while. And that is a hardship for us in that one block street. We are just strictly a one block street. I don't feel that it would be a great loss because I know John, the gentleman that sold him that, happens to be a friend of ours and was our neighbor for 25 years. John grew up in the house. John had a stroke and the yard became too much. And I'm not sure how it ended up going so cheaply, but they had to invest, and I'm not talking about the repairs they done on the house after they bought it. They improved the look of the house, and I'm not going to say they did not. But they gave $35,000 for it, and even if they were not allowed to build another property and make money off renting John's old house, they would still come out ahead. Theirs is a business. Mine is my home. And so when I look at these pictures that I put together for you guys, I'm trying to find the pictures that show you. Okay, so this is from the front end of my vacant lot, if you will. And this is the end of my fence. When I originally put the fence in, we were told to set it back 12 inches so that we could maintain our fence all the way around. I have maintained my fence all the way around on both sides for 25 years. I work with my neighbors that have adjoining properties where I have to come around to their property to go in and do it. And they let me come in and I get, you know, the trees that get in your fences and such. I trim and treat those to keep those out. This is from my
Tammy,
office window.
can I get you to do me a favor?
What's that?
When I mentioned earlier about time, I
Okay,
don't.
what do you want?
I don't watch my watch like a
Okay,
like a
so I'll get
stopwatch.
to another point then. I will show
But as
you.
I said in my preamble, we got to keep our comments timely and
I
related
understand.
to the
I'm
requested
very
appeal.
passionate and I
So I know you
apologize.
take care of your property, you take care of your fence, but can you kind of bring it home for me?
Yep, I will. Okay,
thank
so
you.
this is the property that's going to be east of the vacant lot right now that he wants to change. There's a buffer that I bought. This is my back fence. This faces Southwest 9th, if you will. This is a come and go. When they put this in, I went to city council and was allowed not to have an 8-foot privacy fence because I want to see. It's about me at the end of the day. I want to see. I bought this with all of this when I bought it. So each side of my property has that lot plus buffers, if you will. And I'd be happy to give you all my stuff here and
Yes, Bert will want to receive and keep all that.
yes. Yes, you're gonna get it all. But at the end of the day, the way I feel is I've done a lot of research, and Caleb also has a company, Pyramid Properties. He has 6 different entities that do these types of things. And I'm not against people making money doing that. I think it's awesome. But what I am against is when you put it in my backyard and you go home to the house you bought to live in, and you still have your happy. And his mission statement is that by putting people before profits, and I'm going to ask him to do that, put our neighborhood before your profit on this one. Because we live there, we are homeowners, we have to be there. And he is going to leave that there and walk away. And that's probably, you know, I read on the section 134-1328 has one piece that I held on to. And that is that it would have no significant detrimental impact on the use and enjoyment of my property. And I feel that it does.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Tammy? Tammy, I've just got a real brief one for you here. I understand everything that you put out here. I don't live far from you. In fact, Bordenero's restaurant is right up there in the corner. No one pointed that out. One of my favorite places. But I want to put a few other things in perspective. You say you bought that property, so you had these buffers around you, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, we don't have a legal right as property owners to say, hey, you can never develop your own property because I want that
understand.
view.
I understand.
Now, if Caleb wants to legally combine those lots tomorrow at the Polk County Assessor Recorder, he can do that.
That's right.
He could come in and build a house
Yes.
7.5 feet from you or 7 feet, or he could build a garage the next day within 3 feet of your property boundary.
Yes.
So I know what he's doing is a change. It requires some exceptions, but with what he's
Absolutely.
proposing, he would still be 12 feet away from the property, further away than he would normally need to be if he was developing that as a single lot.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
When you live next door and you walk the yards,
Uh-huh.
and I've walked them
Yep.
both.
Yep.
When you walk those yards, I know that he has to conform. If he's granted this, I know he has to conform. But I would say that when you walk those yards, it doesn't appear as though there's 12 feet here, 30 feet there,
Sure.
20 foot there, and it's a visual.
It feels tight.
It feels
right.
extremely tight, and I do feel
understand that.
like it would congest up
Okay.
the area more.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to go on a track of it's about me and this is what I want. It ruins my happiness. That's not what I came here to do.
Well, that's
But I am
also
not
part of
experienced
you.
at this.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
And he is, so,
Right.
you know.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective. a
I
little.
understood from the
Okay.
beginning, and I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming down today. All right. Anybody else here to speak in opposition? Okay.
That's okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hi there. I don't know.
Yep. There's a little piece of green tape there, and you lay it right over that.
Hello, my name's Jan O'Connor. I live at 6212 Southwest 10th, and I'm directly across the street.
Okay.
And if you remember the picture of the telephone pole, that one of those mailboxes is mine.
Okay.
Okay.
But you don't have a tree trimming business or
I
anything?
do
you?
not.
Okay. All right.
But I need for him to trim a tree in my yard. Anyway, my husband couldn't come, so I'm the speaker, and I don't speak very well. So I'm
You're
going
fine.
to keep on point, and I only have 5 minutes, and I'll get her done. I am also opposed to the proposal of the new house across the street. I'm all for all of their improvements, and I would love to see a nice, huge garage and have that big play yard for some cute family. Unfortunately, that in our neighborhood, it doesn't really happen. These houses here that we were talking about earlier by Bordy's, I love Bordy's too.
Yep.
They're also owned by, it's called Ruperto Properties LLC, and I'm always leery with anybody that has LLC after their name because I haven't had very good luck with them. They've been bad news, and I know they don't conform. You know why? Because they built extra houses there where they didn't need to. I think we do have the traffic of, I call it the 235 of Southwest 9th, because we do have the correctional facility, and they get dropped off at that Quick Trip, and my husband has been emailing, and he's actually, you can thank him, he's the one that got the trash cans by the Quick Trip and things like that. So we're really in tune to our neighborhood. We stay there because we like it. I don't want to go the other side of Fleur where they all tell me to go. Because I do like our quaint little neighborhood. I don't see the fit of a newer house because 5 years down the road, it's going to not be good for me again. And like Tammy said, we're the vigilant ones. I'm the one, and actually when they were just redoing the house, I'm the one that's called 3 or 4, a dozen times while the looters were there, while the construction, we have bad people on our street, and to have another house to look after. I also have this house, this one right here. It's under construction as well. It has been for years. I actually like it vacant because I don't have to worry. I've got the police there half the time because there's people coming into the house. I'm the vigilante on my block, and Tammy's, of course. We used to have elderly neighbors. They've all passed away, God rest their souls, and we've had some rentals, and like I said, it just scares me to have another rental. I hate to say that because I have friends that rent properties, and they're awesome. But I just think, and I wish we could have showed you a little better picture. And I don't know the legality of anything. those, even if it's 5 feet short, it's too short. Black and white. It does not fit there. A new house, a new tiny little bungalow, which I know would be adorable. It'd be better than my house. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And we did like John, and they did pay the $35,000, and then like the next day, or actually it was the day before, they sold it for $50,000. So they're already making money, and I know that that's their business, and good for you, Chip and Joanna. Awesome. And I wish I could do that, but I don't like the predatory. They get my mom gets things too, postcards in the mail, hey, cash for your house, blah, blah, blah. You get somebody in a bind, they grab that 35 grand, and I wish he would have talked to me, because I would have found him a lawyer, and let's just see how that rolls. And so I feel really, really, really guilty about that. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, thank you for coming down today. Anybody else here to speak in opposition? Okay, seeing none, do we have any further questions for staff?
Does Caleb have a chance to come back up? 'Cause I want to know what, okay.
He will, but I want to
Okay.
make sure if we've
We have
got
time,
any
okay.
outstanding issues. But yes, that's always a good reminder. Nathan, anything? Okay. Okay, so Caleb, since you had a few folks with a little concern, anything you want to address the board with, you've got up to 3 minutes.
I am sensitive to neighbors' desires and wishes and what have you. I am a member of Des Moines. I love it here. I moved here 5 years ago, and I wish I would have moved here, or I wish I was born here. I am a South Sider. I actually can walk to this house. I live on the corner of Porter and Southwest 15th, so this is one of the projects that's nearby to us. My only position is I believe this is an improvement to the neighborhood, so I will stand by the neighbor's request and say, let's take care of the neighborhood, and that's what we're aiming to do here. This would be a good, affordable house. These houses sell for about $160,000, which is pretty cheap, considering the cost. Most of the suburbs are $250,000 to $300,000. So I think this will be good for Des Moines. It does add to the tax rolls, and it'll be good for the community.
Did you say
That's all.
16 or 60?
He said 160.
160,000.
160?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Market is going up here this year, but that's about what they sell for.
Okay. It's good to know.
Yep.
That means my house should be worth more than I thought.
There we go.
All right,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
your time. Yeah.
You bet. Okay, we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation.
Well, I'm in favor of doing square lots rather than long skinny lots, because it's been my experience, long skinny lots, people kind of forget about the back end, and they just pile, little extra leaves and derbis back there. And then with making a home that's going to be purchased, not rented on that extra lot, at $160,000, I think you're going to have somebody who's going to be an advocate and pair up with you to bring up the neighborhood rather than somebody who's going to be bringing it down. When you've got that much money invested, you're not going to let it go goodbye, and I think it might help your property values. So for me, it's a make sense deal. I mean, you can put 2 houses in that space anyway because it's 2 lots. And I prefer the square lots over the skinny lots, and I think getting somebody in there in a $160,000 house is going to be somebody who's going to be an advocate with you.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts? Okay. I'd mentioned this to Tammy. I feel for where she's coming from. And when we're used to something or we started with something and somebody wants to change it, that's tough. The biggest thing that I always look at is direct impact to the neighboring lot. And in this case, we're keeping the side yard further away. The house isn't going to be as close as it could be by right, or maybe what he could have asked for. So if anything, by turning it sideways like that, I think he's trying his best to give her some buffer room. I think he was trying to make it fit too, but change is sometimes difficult, but if we're investing with new houses in pre-existing neighborhoods, there's houses here that go back over 100 years now that grew out of the Fort Des Moines as an Army facility, just residual developments that weren't really planned. I like to see new investment too. I think Caleb has shown that he's trying to do things the right way. I've seen a lot of these skinny turned lots with a lot less thought and concept. So this is actually fairly well put forward. So I'd probably look to support it. And I certainly know that would be a big change for these 2 neighbors, but as you said, Lynn, I think probably at the end of the day, a positive investment.
I'll make a motion for staff.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we got a motion and a motion and a second to grant staff recommendation for approval, subject to the conditions presented. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion does carry 5-0. I do want to thank you ladies for coming in today, and Caleb, I look forward to you to be a continual good neighbor down there. All right, thank you very much. Okay, that'll bring us to item 5.
No, 12.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item 12, right? Yes, okay. I knew what we were doing until 30 seconds ago. Had it all written down here. Okay, item 12 is a special permit and variance request at 1750 Lion Street.
Right. Item number 12 is a request for a special permit for a home occupation, and it would allow for retention of a roofing business that's located on the property. They are wanting to park a trailer outdoors, so by having that, our zoning ordinance would consider that a contractor storage yard, which then triggers the need for 2 additional variances. And that's the variance of the provision that prohibits a home occupation from having outside operations, and a variance of the provision that requires a home occupation to be a use that would be allowed in the C2 district. So the subject property is located on the north side of Lion Street, just to the south of the freeway. This is the exit ramp to East University here to the north. So it is on the edge of a residential neighborhood. Back in April, they were cited for having this business. At the time, they were parking quite a few trailers on the property,
And on the public street, it looks like.
yeah.
Okay.
And they also had some storage of other materials happening. They've since cleaned it up, and at the time that they filed this application, they said that the only thing they would be parking outside on the property is one of their unenclosed trailers here. And they would be parking that on the north 30 feet of the property, either on the west or east side of the existing detached garage. And all other components of the business would take place within that garage. Here's a photo of the property from Lion Street. You can see it is a well-maintained property. And then here's the consent map. We just had one card in support, and that was from this property here at the fringe. Staff does believe that it's reasonable to grant the special permit. However, we would want that to be subject to the condition that the trailer is parked within the fully enclosed building and not outdoors like they're proposing. So I'll just read through the staff recommendation real quick. Staff recommends denial of the 2 variances, but approval of the special permit subject to 1, any trailer associated with a business shall be stored within a fully enclosed structure. 2, there should be no more than 1 personal vehicle associated with a business, which is not larger than a standard pickup truck, parked on the premise at any time. And then 3, the home occupation or the business shall comply with the requirements for all home occupations. And that's A through N. I won't read through those. But, and that's our recommendation. So any questions for me?
Questions from the board?
Why do you have only 1 personal vehicle? I don't understand.
That's just our recommendation. The applicant said that they're the only person really involved in the business, so I guess that's a way to limit the number of vehicles associated with the business that are parked outdoors. If they park them in the garage, that's fine, but
It's a limitation on 1 personal vehicle associated with the business.
Oh, okay.
yeah, sorry.
So if I run Mel's Plumbing, I could park my plumbing van in my driveway because I also use it personally.
Okay, I was getting confused.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, no, so they could have 10 licensed vehicles for their
Of their
family,
own.
but just
Thank you.
one
I
if
was
it's
confused.
identifying the business. Sure.
And Bert, just as, where's Waldo in the picture stuff, what's up with all these cars on the lot east of there?
I didn't even notice that. It must have been overflow from this church. If you look.
Okay, so this is, because even at the street, we've been on this board long enough, there's cars all over on the one side of the street. There must be something going on. There's no car dealership or auto servicing business or anything nearby, is there?
No, and
Okay.
if you look, that property is owned by that church, so.
Okay, so ironically, your flyover was, well, it could have been a funeral. It could have been a funeral or a,
Yeah,
yeah.
St. Peter's.
Okay, just curious.
That is a good observation.
Is there a neighborhood kind of redevelopment plan or long-term plan? Because I know this, with carving up for freeway over the years and other things, is this just an R1 basically then?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
in the Capitol East Neighborhood Association. They do have a neighborhood plan, but
Yeah.
I don't believe it calls for anything other than.
Okay, I know there's been some
residential in this area.
positive things there, but a few more are needed because, this is a very easy to get to area and I think could be a good place for
Yeah.
further growth and investment.
Yeah, I think closer to East 15th Street and the freeway ramp, it makes sense to have some commercial development
right,
there, but
right.
this is.
Yeah, but this gets us down the block, or
Yeah.
the way about 3 blocks, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's primarily residential plus the church.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. All right, thank you, sir. All right, applicant or representative of the applicant. It's your turn. Good afternoon, welcome. Just need your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Luis Cancino. My address is 1750 Lyon Street.
Yep.
First of all, there's too many vehicles on the pictures, but I already get rid of a few of them.
Good.
I bought them when I bought the property because I remodeled it. So there was some garbage and stuff because I was remodeling the house, and it's kind of tough for me to keep my work and remodeling the house because I did it myself. I apologize about that because I know I had a lot of stuff in there, but right now the yard is clean. I'm a subcontractor, so my contractor supplies all the material and everything, so I don't storage any material in the property. The only thing that I'm asking is about to park my trailer, obviously the truck that I used to haul it, and a cargo van.
Cargo van, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So like 2 vehicles and plus the trailer.
Okay. So you've seen what the city's proposing. They'd like to let you have your home business, but they want to limit the number of vehicles that can be stored outside. And that the only vehicle you could have stored outside would be about the size of a pickup truck. So with that limitation, is that different than what you want? Or do you think you could find a way to work with that, maybe store the trailer inside or any enclosed cube trailer or?
Well, the white enclosed trailer.
Yeah.
I already get rid of that one too.
That's
yeah.
gone.
The black
Okay.
one, the dome trailer that shows on the picture is the only one that I need to park there.
And usually, and I've seen this in my neighborhood, a tandem axle black dump trailer doesn't really fit in a residential neighborhood. So that's why the city, I think they're saying you're either going to have to keep that inside, or like most contractors would, you have a contractor storage lot, and maybe you can rent a space on a lot somewhere. But that's what the city's proposal is, to not have that trailer outside.
Yeah. Well, I asked them about it at the beginning, and I asked them if I can put it in the garage.
Right.
They said I couldn't. At that point, I don't know why.
Well,
But,
I think the way the case is presented, if I'm correct, staff would allow you to keep that trailer enclosed in the garage.
Because I can do that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
fits?
Yeah,
It'll fit in the
yeah.
garage?
It fits,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. If it fits, it ships, so. Okay, all right. Anything else you want to add, Luis?
Well, the only thing is that I have a good relationship with my neighbors.
Sure.
And the reason that I'm asking about it is because there is no other houses around that section of the property.
Right.
So I don't think I'm gonna bother anybody.
Right.
I don't make noise. I don't work at home.
Good.
I just park my vehicles.
Right.
So
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Luis? Okay, you can go ahead and sit down. Thank
Okay,
you for
thank
your
you.
presentation. Anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Seeing none, anybody here to speak in opposition to the applicant? Seeing none, any further questions for staff?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. What was and I maybe just wasn't paying close enough attention, what was the reason for the variance of the provision that require the C2?
Well, if you have an outdoor
Okay,
trailer,
so they're
we call
both,
that,
both of the variance
both for the
requests
trailer-
were
the
both,
trailer alone.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, we'll go ahead and close public portion then and go to board deliberation.
So it sounds like he's amenable to the,
He's close, yep.
yeah, to the trailer and being parked inside the garage, which means we could deny the variances, which satisfies me, as you all know. But it sounds like he still would like to have our number 2 basically read, there shall be no more than 2 personal vehicles associated with the business, is what it sounds like. I assume I guess we could have asked, I should have maybe, but I assume the cargo van is associated with the business, and that's why he needs that in addition to his truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess our recommendation was 1 vehicle, but I think 2 would.
Yeah.
I don't think
and
staff
if-
would protest.
Okay,
allowing 2.
so I kind of get nerdy on this stuff, but if we wanted to say 2, could we say that it would be limited to a 3/4 ton capacity or less? Because what I wouldn't want to see is that somebody comes in with a big tandem axle Peterbilt service body truck and they're parking it in their driveway.
Yeah, and I guess that was.
But if it's
why
a
we
plumbing
had
van or it's
said
a
standard pickup truck, I don't know if Suan's.
a standard pickup truck would be a
Or
half
you could
ton
say,
capacity.
Or a cargo van.
Yeah. Suann, you kind of understand what I'm saying, right?
Hey, Chair, members of the board, Sue Ann Donovan, zoning enforcement officer. In the Traffic and Transportation Code of the City of Des Moines, there is a limit on the size of a truck that can go over residential streets.
Exactly.
So if you wish to be more specific, you could put it in your decision in order that it has to comply with the rules of the traffic and transportation for the weight of the vehicle on a city street. And I don't know right off the top
Well,
of
which
my
is
head.
true, and you're usually very conservative, but I would say even more so, parking ordinance says you can't have a vehicle of more than 1 ton capacity parked on a city street unless it's there to deliver or service. So the weight limit on a street can be far different, yet much more allowable, don't you think?
I think the way that I've always viewed that code is if it's a truck that is delivering and it's over, I wish I knew 12, I think is the magic number, 12 ton.
Yeah.
That it can go to deliveries
Yeah.
only.
Yeah,
but it
12
can't
ton is
park.
24,000 pounds. That's a
Right.
large vehicle.
very large,
Yeah,
yes.
what I'm getting at is the capacity of the vehicle for its carrying capacity, not its weight. So a pickup truck is usually a half ton or 3/4 ton capacity.
That I'm comfortable with being just a regular vehicle that,
Yeah, like a
Like a
light
plumber
van or a
would, or
light
a-
truck. So if we said, maybe to get to Nathan's point, if he'd allow maybe 2 vehicles of no more than 1 ton carrying capacity, that'd
be easier for our enforcement people to understand also.
yeah, okay.
So a cargo van is a personal vehicle? Because I've heard
Well-
cargo van, I think, you got your stuff in there, that's a work vehicle.
That's true, but if it's designed to function not only as a business, but could reasonably use to transport a person, like I'm the business owner, I'm driving to a sales appointment,
Okay,
or I'm going to pick up my kid
Okay.
after school,
so you call it personal, okay.
yeah, I think that's where that's coming from, right? Whereas a cherry picker body truck, probably you don't pick your kid up from soccer practice with that.
Be pretty exciting, though.
Yeah. You put the kid in it. Yes, and there were none, yeah. So, all right, so we had a few questions. We're in public, or we're in closed portion for deliberation, so it sounds like we'd maybe want to give them a chance to maybe have a second vehicle that could be related to the business, but also for personal use of no more than 1 ton capacity for either? Is that kinda
Yeah,
where we're
that's
headed?
what in fact, I'll move that, just as you laid out, Mel, for number 2, but keep all the other staff recommendations and the denials of the 2 variance requests.
And I'll
Second.
let Cindy second that. Okay, if everybody understands that motion, all those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries 5-0. Staff, I'd recommend, we've got a good guy who fixed up his property, trying to run a reasonable business, but still fit in with the neighborhood. If you just kind of worked through that decision in order, make sure he's clear on that, that would be very helpful. So, all right, Louise, we're giving you a chance to do a lot of what you wanted there, but just like you said, kind of keep it neat and clean and work within those boundaries, and you'll be improving your neighborhood. Okay? Thank you for coming in today. Okay. And let's see, what's our next item, man? 13. All right, that'll bring us to item 13, an exception and variance request at 2728 Hickman Road.
Item number 13 is a proposal to construct a 2-story tall garage that would have a maximum height of 25.5 feet. So they're requiring 2 appeals. One is an exception of 8.5 feet over the maximum allowed 17 feet of height, and the other is a variance of 1 story over the maximum allowed 1 story. The subject property is located along the south side of Hickman Road. It's a 1.5-story home right now. They would be building a detached garage in the east side yard. They haven't settled on the design yet, but here are 2 concepts that they've proposed. And for zoning purposes, both of these would be considered 2 stories, since the portions of the upper floor would have sidewalls that are more than 4 feet in height. Whereas if the sidewalls were 4 feet or less in height, it would be considered a half story. So really having these bump outs here are what caused the second appeal to be a variance rather than an exception. Here's a photo of the property. Again, it's a single-family house. The new garage would be located here to the east. You can see Hickman Road is being reconstructed right now, so there is construction equipment related to the city project in front of their house. Here's the home from another angle, and you can see that new garage would be built here. And then here's the consent map. We've had support submitted. From staff's perspective, we do feel that the proposed garages would be compatible with the essential character of the neighborhood. We just didn't feel that they had met the criteria necessary for granting a variance. As you know, the variances require demonstration of unnecessary hardship. However, we do feel that they've satisfied the criteria necessary for granting exceptions, and the exceptions would require them to construct the upper level with sidewalls that are 4 feet or less. So we do feel that it would be possible to maybe reconfigure either one of these designs so that it meets the intent. But again, that's our recommendation. So. Any questions for me?
Are they wanting to put some living quarters on top of this garage, or are they just looking?
It would just be for storage only.
So just aesthetically, they want to add the dormer.
Yeah, and that would allow them to have, you can see from the floor plan, they would be having a full stairwell up to that upper level. You can see in our recommendation that conditions 4 and 5 say that they can't have a dwelling unit up there or can't use it for a home-based business.
Can you show a picture of the house again?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so you can see one of the options actually matches the character of the house. They would just be turned sideways.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, applicant or representative of the applicant. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for waiting today.
My name's Gene Ford, 2728 Hickman. I've lived there for 18 years. The unique lot, I guess at the back of, I'll put it here, at the back of the property, the reason I didn't put it in the back of the yard is because we have a ravine in the back.
Mm-hmm.
They did a multi-million-dollar project to put this drain to prevent flooding further east. And at the back of the lot of our place, it drops off approximately 6 foot at the back on this side, 10 feet in, and then drops immediately down probably 15 feet up to about 12 feet from the back lot there. But storage is what I'm wanting to have for the garage there. The lot is narrow. Can you talk about it? Oh, sorry. The narrow lot only allows 24 foot wide to put a garage in there. So our daughter started driving here last month, and to have 3 cars there would basically take up most of the space of a single story. So I'd like to have storage up above and have it match the house to make it look like it's always been there.
Okay. Anything else you want to add? Take some questions?
Yeah, questions, please.
Questions from the members?
Do you kind of understand what staff was talking about with respect to the variance and the exception and just changing
Then that'd be fine.
with some slight changes? Okay.
Yep, that would be fine. With the 34.5 foot height of the house, I wanted a garage that better matched.
Yeah,
Instead of have a real tall house and a short garage, kind of like to have it
especially because it slopes.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if we did look at an amended appeal to grant the exception request level, you'd still more than likely proceed with the project?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I guess my question is,
Yeah.
For this type of garage without the dormers, would that satisfy the requirements?
Let's,
Would that be-
let's see what the city's
As long as
angle
the-
is.
Yeah, if the sidewalls up here were less than 4 feet in height, that would
Okay,
for sure meet the intent.
okay.
And that's something the planning administrator could, or staff could work on, kind of an amended approach without us getting involved in that? If we were at the exception level, we don't have to design that and, okay. All right, so if the interior sidewalls were less than 4 feet, he wouldn't have to do the dormer then? Okay. All right. Okay. All righty. Good question. Thank you for your presentation. All right, anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Anybody here to speak in opposition to the applicant? Seeing none, any further questions for staff? I think we covered that. Okay, we'll close public portion and go to board deliberation.
I think staff made good points in the recommendation. It seems like he's comfortable with it and doesn't seem to meet the variance test, but definitely does make a good case for having a bigger garage and built in a similar fashion to what he proposed. So I'd move staff recommendation.
Excellent.
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of granting the requested exception appeals, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. So, Mr. Ford, I want to thank you for having a nice place and keeping your investment in that neighborhood. That'll be a positive addition for everybody. Okay. Let's see. 14? Let's see. Yes, that brings us to item 14, a variance request at 2625 Westover Boulevard.
Thanks.
Lots of garages today.
Winter's coming.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this property is on the northwest part of Des Moines. In fact, if you see the blue line there, that separates Des Moines from Urbandale. This is a unique
These are the two separate.
area of Des Moines that projects west of 63rd Street, north of Hickman, south of Douglas. Westover is the furthest west, north-south street in the city of Des Moines.
I'm assuming that Westover Mortuary Funeral Home Services is at the end of the street?
Down at the south end of this block,
Okay.
I think. If not further, at the Hickman and Westover.
Corner there, yep.
Intersection there. This is what I would call a flag lot. You might know it as a flag lot where the lot width doesn't meet the minimum lot width for the district, which is 60 feet. Now, this is an existing parcel with an existing home. It's sandwiched in between what I would say is you have, I think this is a single-family dwelling. This one is a two-family dwelling, and I believe this is a two-family dwelling down here. And this is a little unusual in that it sits back further from the street and then had a little modification to the larger parcel here for a encroachment of some sort at some point in time. But you'll notice that is the property that is objected to this on the card. So when we get to the consent map, you'll see that. But the property owner immediately to the south is in opposition to this request. The request is for a garage that exceeds the lot area, or the area based on the rear yard area. Based on their size of lot, it earns the maximum 1,000 square feet for a lot under an acre. So rather than it being a percentage, it comes out to be, you defer to the 1,000 square foot maximum because it does not exceed a 1 acre parcel. So then for an exception level appeal, they would get up to 1,500 if it was granted as a full exception. They are requesting a total of 2 accessory structures, 960 square feet and 720 square feet, that would put them at 830 square feet over the 1,000 maximum, so a total of 1,830 square feet. This is looking at the property from the street on Westover to the little bit to the northeast. This is the single-family dwelling on that flag parcel in the background. This is looking at it more directly, and it's a little bit eclipsed by the house to the north. This is probably a better angle to get a little closer into it. And again, I should say that's a two-family dwelling to the north.
And Eric, that shows the white existing garage in the rear yard there, is that correct?
Yeah, so, well, yes. So and it drops down a little bit to get to it, so it does kind of sit lower than where the house sits on the crown. So you have the house, an existing garage, and then they want to build this other 24 by 40 up here with the drive coming off of the existing drive. There's a pool that had already been removed that shows up on our planimetric mapping that they wanted to point out that won't be there. That's making way for this proposed garage. They're also showing the type of design here for the garage. And they are trying to indicate here that it would be below the 17 in height. And I believe that that's the facade that would face to the south, where the drive would come in to the garage. Staff's concern is a character concern. We believe that they could demonstrate the test for an exception level appeal to get to up to a 1,500 square foot total area for their accessory structures. But we don't believe that they can demonstrate that they would have no return on the property if they weren't granted this second 24 by 40 to allow 1,830 square feet total on the property. So we're recommending denial of that request. However, we do believe that it would meet the exception, so we would recommend approval of an amended appeal to allow exception of a 1,500 square foot total aggregate area for accessory structures, with the conditions to ensure its character. We want to make sure that it won't contain any more than the 1,500 square feet total, no matter what happens with other accessory structures. Any accessory structure shall be constructed with building materials that are compatible with the primary dwelling. So if you look at the existing dwelling, it's lap-sided, split level house with brick materials in the front, shutters. We would want a comparable lap material, whether it be fiber cement board or vinyl, to be compatible. Any accessory structure shall be constructed in compliance with all applicable building codes with issuance of all necessary permits by the Permit and Development Center. No portion shall be used as a dwelling unit. No portion shall be used in association with a home-based business unless they come back to the board and request that as a special permit.
Okay.
Right now, everything I believe is being shown on this as a steel type material, so they would definitely have to modify the skin material on the garage as proposed. I don't have any communication with the appellant to know whether they're willing to do that or not. If you're reducing this, they would lose 530 square feet total area for the new structure in order to keep it at 1,500. I guess we're not going to get into what that dimension should be if they do drop it down by that 330 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So, they probably would go with whatever made the most sense with what's available in the typical dimensions for those.
Okay. Okay.
And then this is the card.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I don't want to be here to get anybody in trouble today per se, but in the letter the applicant submitted, he said that there's a business to his north that repairs semi-truck tires. And I would assume that's the Arthur Gustafson property. Are you aware of any home-based business occupation or anything zoning for that one?
I don't know. I know there's a veterinary clinic in the area that was granted, but
Okay.
I'm not aware of anything that would repair tires.
Because one thing that staff went to was character of the neighborhood and looking at other accessory buildings and size and scope of those. And but looks like we do have maybe some kind of accessory uses going on here in the area. Okay, it's just more of a question than anything.
And if you're trying to get a look at that, there is some.
Yeah, we got a couple buildings
Yeah,
there.
buildings
Mhm.
back here.
Right.
It's hard to tell because of the flag nature of this, whether, that one would be a different area, but I would assume that would be also subject to 1,000. And I
Sure.
didn't look to see what relief they may have been granted over the
Okay,
years.
yep, I know we're talking about this property and not others around it. All right, anything else for Eric? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, applicant. See, just by sitting here, you're getting experience how this works. Welcome and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Roger Fouch, 2625 Westover Boulevard here in Des Moines, 50322. I guess I'll start with the map that's already up here in the picture.
Sure.
As you can see that this is my property here. This gentleman, and we're great neighbors, we get along well, but he has ran a tire repair business out of there for the last 30 plus years.
Okay.
He currently has, let me grab my picture here. 3 garages. Let's see that or not. 2 garages are 720 square feet. The third garage is a 24 by 60. So he has the equivalent of really about 12 car stalls there, along with some sheds that he's put on the property as well. So just to kind of clarify. And then also this property here to the south is a duplex. The gentleman that has requested a no for that, that is a duplex. This is a single family.
So the
This
gentleman
is
that
also-
said no is the owner, but he doesn't live there?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the property in front of my house is also a duplex. It was built at the same time as my house, intended to sell together, but never did. I've tried to buy that property several times and have had no luck in doing so. It's currently for sale, but he wants way too much money for it. So the positioning of the, well, I guess I'll go back and give you my story here. So this is the second time I've owned this house. This is the first house I bought when I was 20 years old. I lived there for 20 years. I've remodeled the house twice. The garage that's currently there and the shed, I personally built those. All the concrete work, the house has been remodeled inside and out. I sold that house after a divorce and then bought it back 2 years ago, almost 20 years later. It was always my favorite house. I grew up about 4 blocks from here.
Okay.
I love the street. I love the fact it sits off the street. It's a great location. My backyard is kind of like the gal earlier. It's kind of my own little space. And so it's been really nice. I owned Shaw Heating and Cooling for 35 years. We had a 12,000 square foot building, of which we had about 2,400 square feet of warehouse space in the back that I kept a lot of my toys and stuff in at that time. So we've since then sold the company and just recently sold the building itself. And so all that 2,400 square feet of warehouse space went to my dad's garage and my garage, which is why I'm requesting a second location. Those tools and things are not company tools. They're woodworking tools. We had kind of a shop area set up back there that we could do woodworking. My dad's an avid woodworker. And so in the process of all this, my dad has developed a terminal lung cancer. He will be, probably less than 2 years, he will be gone. His tools will become mine. His classic car that he has will become mine. I actually gave it to him as a gift a few years ago. He's remodeled it, restored it, and it will come back to me. So part of the reason I need a little bit bigger garage is just to store those things and have, basically it'll be a woodworking shop and kind of a collection area for me as far as his vehicle and stuff like that. So there's no intention whatsoever of being a business. I'm retired. I have no intention of going back to work. So that's the business side of it will not be the case. So, and as he said, I'm really looking for an additional 330 square feet, not the complete, amount as well. So, the other reason I'd like to go a little bit bigger is the fact that it will block my neighbors. What I see in his backyard, there is his 3 garages, or 4 actually, if you split the one down the middle. Positioning of my garage basically blocks all that. So it gives me a nicer view rather than looking at his garages. At least I can look at my own personal garage and not look at his from that perspective. Along with an increased tax roll for the property. So hopefully that answers any questions. Here is also a picture off of Google of his property at some point in the past. You can see multiple vehicles there. He is retired from the tire business now, but he still has a lot of stuff sitting around from that perspective. And I think you had a picture, and I turned in, so that's it.
Okay. So, questions for Roger?
Do you understand the restrictions and conditions that staff has recommended with respect to kind of aesthetics and makeup and materials?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with those? Because it didn't seem to be reflected in the initial design that you submitted.
So currently the house is vinyl sided. Both of the other garage and the shed that I built before, which were masonite, have been converted over to vinyl, which so all the property currently is vinyl sided. My quote is to also do vinyl siding that matches the other garage and sheds with white trim and match up to what's there already, so yes.
Okay. So if I boiled this down to both sides of this argument, we're 330 square feet apart, right? That's what it comes down to. So, I mean, we can make this easy and just go with the staff recommendation. You just gotta squeeze your new garage down by 330 square feet. But if we do that, isn't it like, won't it be something like, I don't know, 45% smaller or something? I haven't run all the numbers, but, right? It'd be considerably smaller than...
It definitely impedes in the ability to store, a classic vehicle and also have woodworking tools in there and have room to work with woodworking tools. And I'm, and I do a lot of work. I don't do auto work. It's mostly woodworking, storage, things like that. So.
And I trust you want to keep the 15 by 10 shed, the other 150 square feet, because sometimes we've seen people just get rid of that.
Well, I just remodeled it. I built that. That
Well,
was the
'cause
first
when you
thing I
said you
built when I
built
bought
it.
the house. I just rebuilt it because it was about ready to fall over, and it now looks like new. So
Right. Okay.
So I really don't want to tear it down in order to do that.
Okay.
So and
You are very resilient, aren't you?
well, I plan on staying in this house for a long time. I've put a lot of money into it, a lot of sweat equity and hard work. I can go through a whole list of things I've done to this house. I've owned 15 other houses, and I bought this one back because it was always my favorite house. So
Cool.
I don't
That's
have any
good to
plan on
hear.
going anywhere.
Okay.
How many classic cars do you have that are going to have to fit in there? Are we talking
Well-
4 cars, 2 cars?
Currently, I have a pickup truck and a trailer, which you saw in the picture. That is a vehicle I use for hauling four-wheelers and motorcycles, the trailer and the truck. So I'd like to get those back behind the house so they're not sitting in front.
Mhm.
And then his classic car as well, which will be coming. And so it's toys.
So you're
as
trying
well.
to fit 5 cars in that one garage?
No.
Oh,
So
how
my
many
other
are-
garage, yeah, my other.
How many are to fit in this new one?
So my other garage is a 2.5 car garage that I'll
Yeah.
park myself, and someday when I get married, who knows? But we'll park the vehicles there. This garage will be primarily for the toys and classic car.
Okay.
And that's why there's only one overhead door, because the rest of that will be shop area for woodworking and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, if I wanted more vehicles in there, I would put a second door in, but that's no intention to do that whatsoever. I want it for basically
Right.
shop area.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Roger.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Seeing none, anybody here to speak in opposition to the applicant? Seeing none, any further questions for staff? Okay, if none, we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation. Thoughts? Cindy? It's in your ward.
Well, yeah, I know the area really well. It's really a pretty area. And I kind of tend to go along with his request. Part of the reason is because he's got the neighbor that's got lots of garages. And visually, I think it would be an improvement for him. And this sits off the beaten path. I mean, if you don't know this property, you would have a little bit of trouble finding it. And I've lived in the area for a million years. I didn't realize there was so much back there. You know, there's lots of property.
Million years.
I've lived there quite, I won't even tell you how many years, but a lot of years. And there's a lot of property back there. And since it's kind of tucked away hidden, I really don't have any objections to it.
Okay. Other
I
thoughts?
kind of agree with you with the neighbor and their places, and he's going to be using vinyl and making it look nice and fitting in.
Right.
I think whenever it comes time to resell, people wouldn't be objecting to seeing that in that area. I think that area kind of attracts somebody who's going to want the extra outbuildings. I could see my son wanting that house.
Sure.
Or the garages, the house is incidental. And I think he makes a good argument for what he needs. Like you said, it's really looking at the aerial view map, there's not very many people that are going to be looking at that and affected by it.
Right. And I'm sure in this case, I'm guessing we'd all be comfortable with the exception level. Staff's even recommended that. But the variance level, he wants another 330 square feet above that. But that's about 15 by 20, if, just real rough estimates. That's not that big of a deal now on a variance test. It's a pretty high bar, but part of the variance test is would it be in incompatible with the general character, welfare, et cetera, of the neighborhood, I don't think it'd have any impact on
You
that.
showed the neighbor has 2,800 square feet
Yeah.
of garage.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's,
yeah. So, you know, I would probably be generally there as well on the proposal as it was presented. He's not trying to make it too tall. So, Cindy?
Well, I would move approving the variance.
Subject to staff recommendation?
Yeah, subject to staff recommendations, of
Okay.
course.
Is that clear enough? We'd be doing the variance level, but with the siding quality and
At the amount that he
compatible.
has, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
okay.
second.
All right, Dave seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
Those opposed, 1. Okay, so just like we said earlier today, it takes 4 to pass. So you pass 4 to 1. So, yeah, we appreciate you. Not sure if you truly left Des Moines, but we appreciate you coming back. And that call shawl, y'all, that I hope you get some residuals or royalties off that, because whoever wrote that jingle, it's priceless. Have a good afternoon. Okay, that'll take us to item 16. That's a special permit request at 2725 Merle Hay Road.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, item number 15 is actually, I'm sorry, number 16 is actually 2 special permits. One would be a special permit to allow a permanent banner sign, and the other would be a special permit to allow temporary banner signs. The subject property is the First Assembly of God Church on the east side of Merle Hay Road, just to the north of Hickman Road and south of Urbandale Avenue. They are wanting to have 2 different banner signs. The one at the north end would be the permanent banner sign that would identify the daycare that operates on the property, and it would be affixed to the fence. So that sign requires a special permit for an institution of religious or educational character. And then the other banner signs would be located further south on the property. They're wanting to have a banner sign displayed up to 6 times per calendar year for 10-day periods, and that special permit would allow them the ability to do so for up to 5 years, and at the end of the 5 years, they would have to reapply to the board for that special permit. Here are some photos. Hopefully you can see. I know the sun was in a bad spot when I was doing the site photos. This is the playground at the northwest corner of the property for the daycare. Again, that's where they would want to have the permanent banner on that fence. And then these photos are just moving south on the property down Merle Hay Road. And then as you get further south, you can see the temporary banner sign that they currently have there. Yeah, it's they do have a fairly large off-street parking to the south of the church building. And here's the consent map. We did get, most of the cards were in support. There were 2 in opposition. Plus, there's an email going around from the Merle Hay Neighborhood Association that just expressed concerns over the permanent banner sign affixed to the fence. Staff has recommended denial of that permanent banner sign affixed to the fence. We feel that really the intent of the ordinance is that any freestanding sign should be a more durable material. In fact, that's why banner signs are strictly prohibited as permanent signs, and any freestanding sign is required to be a monument sign with a masonry base. So again, we have recommended denial of the special permit for the permanent sign, but we do feel that they've satisfied the criteria necessary for granting the special permit to have the temporary banner signs up to 6 times per year for a 5-year period. We have recommended, I believe, 8 different conditions on that. I'll just read through those quickly. 1, it should be valid for a 5-year period. 2, each sign shall only be displayed for a 10-day period. 3, the property shall not have the banner signs more than 6 times per calendar year. 4, any banner sign shall not exceed 32 square feet in area. 5, the banner shall be maintained in good repair. 6, the sign should be securely affixed to a support structure. And then 7, they must comply with any necessary sign permitting requirements. And then 8, if they violate these conditions or become a nuisance to the neighborhood, the zoning officer would have the ability to bring the special permit back for reconsideration. Any questions for me?
Are there any instances of a permanent banner sign anywhere in the city?
I can't think of any.
Okay.
And Bert, with this, this is a well-known location, a good location, but I can't recall, is there an electronic sign now, like a reader board sign for the church, or is that just a lighted sign?
Just this lighted sign right here.
So it's just lighted, there's no changing words or anything? And I can have the applicant talk to that too, I was just curious.
Here might be the better.
And with the signs that have been put up there with that advertisement with the poles and the banner, I'm assuming did they have a special permit for that, or was that a non-compliant sign at the time?
It's been a non-compliant
Okay.
sign. That might be, maybe they had a conversation with the zoning inspector. I don't know that.
Right.
Told them they needed to apply for it.
So did this request come out of a non-compliance concern, or do you know?
Not that I know of. It's possible, but I
Okay.
hadn't heard about that.
All right, thank you.
Bert, would they be allowed to put a permanent sign up for the daycare, or is there one already?
Yeah, they would be allowed to have a permanent sign. For the,
Okay.
It would
They
have
are-
to be monument sign. If it's
Right.
if it was affixed to the building, that'd be okay. But if it's a freestanding sign, it would have to be.
They could do a monument, okay.
Right.
Okay, so they'd have rights to have a second, I know they have the larger outdoor sign already on the ground for the main worship center church there.
Yeah, it's possible that the second sign would require a special permit
Okay.
from the board. But
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else for Bert? Okay. All right, applicant or representative of the applicant. Thank you for your patience this afternoon.
Excuse me. Thank you all for your time and service. Really appreciate it. My name is Andy Reed, representing First Assembly of God, 2725 Merle Hay Road. So they're the two separate requests. And I got the email today from Bert, thank you, Bert, that the neighborhood association is right now not suggesting that we move forward with that. So I'm assuming that's a no-go at this point, or should I speak to
Well,
that?
that's just their comments in the case.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we're here to listen to all sides
Right.
and
And so what we're thinking with the more permanent sign for the daycare is it would be something that would be done very well with excellence, and we would attach it to the chain link fence seasonally. So around times where we're pushing enrollment for our daycare that meets at the church. So it wouldn't be a banner that would be out getting faded in the sun or dirty or tattered. It would be designed well, put up well and securely, and maintained well. Also, it would, probably be up for a few weeks at a time, probably 2 to 3 times a year is what we would be looking at for that.
Okay. So Andy, one question I have, and I'm trying to follow through with this, and I think staff did a good job here, but sometimes I'm starting to think about the item and recalling. So you want a special permit to allow temporary banner signs elsewhere on the property also that would advertise what, like Vacation Bible School or something?
Correct.
Or-
Yeah, those
okay.
types of things. Christmas Eve service, Easter service, those are the
Hey,
types
so
of
you're
things.
kind of, no offense, you're doing what people used to do 20 years ago. Now what people want to do is have an electronic sign, and by city code that can, change every few seconds to have a message, hey, come here on Christmas Day, or join us for Easter, or now enrolling for daycare. Is that anything that you wanted to look at doing in the future, or did you discuss, we'd rather just do this?
Yeah, I think for the time being, we would just be looking at this and not necessarily purchasing an electronic sign anytime in the near future.
So if we were inclined to say, staff sounds pretty adamant about their concerns about not having banner signs on a fence
Sure.
Semi-permanent or even temporary, but that they would allow you to have the temporary kind of freestanding banner a limited period during the year. Well, then what I might suggest, or if I was in your shoes, I might go, well, then I can still use that to advertise the daycare.
Okay.
But I've still got a limited amount of time it can be up for whatever message you want on it. So that's, has that kind of circulated as a thought
so
for
use
you?
some of those time slots for the daycare. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a good suggestion.
Okay. Or you could just apply to have the daycare sign on the building that identifies it
Okay.
as a permanent sign, but you wouldn't be able to have it say, enrolling for fall, enrolling for spring,
okay.
if you just have permanent letters.
Okay.
But
So
there might
actually-
be the potential, you may need some other variances if it's, more than one sign on the premise, because I think you just got one
Okay.
big property there, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but
Yep.
staff could talk to you, you might have signage allowance by square footage that might allow for some building signage as well.
Okay. Very good.
And I know this is complicated and most people aren't very, they haven't thought about it much,
Yeah. No, I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, there could be some other options too.
Thank you.
Okay, well, those are the only thoughts or questions I'd have for you. Anybody else? I don't think so. Okay, all right. Thank you, Andy. You can go ahead and sit down. I kind of think the longer you wait, the more time you should be allowed to talk, but but he's about being brief, so appreciate that. Anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Anybody to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Further questions for staff? None. Okay, we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation.
So could he put these temporary signs up on the fence?
Staff is,
Just can't stay there. It doesn't say where he can or can't put them up. They just said they don't allow a permanent banner sign.
well, his special permit request,
To support
I think the
structures
context of it was they wanted to have it with their proposal at the permit desk was to put it on the fence, right?
And our recommendation was that any temporary sign be affixed to a support structure. So I don't think a fence would meet that requirement.
It wouldn't?
It wouldn't. It
Okay.
wouldn't meet our recommendation.
So you'd like to have 2 poles and have it
Stakes in the ground.
zip tied to it, and then it comes down in 10 days?
Right.
Or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, I was just looking more for clarification.
So, yeah,
Tell them where to put it
that's a
up.
good point. So although the banner sign with the stakes probably did not have a permit, that's kind of what we're thinking you'd approve.
Right. It would
On a
be
temporary
similar
basis.
to what's there
Yes,
now.
it'd be up to them then
And
within,
you made a good point. If they wanted to move it closer to the daycare, right in front of that fence, I think we would be amenable to that if they did that
Right.
twice a year
Okay.
for attending.
So basically we're not trying to advertise this daycare. He's trying to advertise when they enroll, not this is where it's located. So
I guess
you'd be
that's
okay
kinda
with
what it
that
sounds like.
sign in addition to
yeah.
all the other signs?
It's probably 6 of one, half dozen of another,
We're
yeah.
in there.
A lot of churches do that now.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
Bible school, there's
Right.
Thanksgiving services, there's special Christmas services, and there's
Exactly.
poles up in the front and then they're down.
Right, yeah. And some of them got permits, but some of them probably did not, and the average person really doesn't know the
Okay.
difference, yeah.
Okay.
So Ann, do you have something you wanted to add?
I just want to remind the board, we shouldn't be discussing content.
I understand
It's
constitutionally, right,
constitutional.
right.
So, so we can
Yeah.
talk about banners and locations,
Right.
but not what's on them.
Yep, I think that's a very good point. For clarification of what the applicant wants to do, it's nice to kind of know that, but yeah, whether he wants to say this is a daycare, or whether he wants to say enrolling now, that's not up to us to.
Right.
Yeah, but I think Dave was just after trying to understand what they're doing.
Right.
But yes, we won't make any decisions on that content.
What would people think of going with the staff recommendation of not allowing the permanent banner for the daycare and upping the number of times they can do the temporary ones, so they could use maybe up to 4 times for the other location, the daycare, and the 6 for wherever they had already been approved for?
Well, 6 10-day periods. I mean, if they did, spring and fall or twice a year for
Because
the
they want 6 for
daycare.
the other, so allow 4 for the daycare use and just make a total of 10. Is there a problem with that?
I think
Well,
what you're
but then
getting
there's
at is
100
you would
days.
just add
Yeah.
additional.
That's what I mean, just add additional days.
But then that's 100 days of signage for what should be temporary short-term signages, which is the intent of having temporary special permits.
That's what I'm asking is-
Right. If we give them like too many days, it's like, hey, you guys maybe just need to get a monument sign. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Because a lot of them are like, you know, grand opening or annual sale, and they get a 10-day permit, and it happens
Also know
once
that
a year and
they
they're done.
probably are working on a budget.
Well, I think with Andy's wheels turning up there, yeah, there's other options that he could
Yeah.
have too, but I know right now this might fit their needs, but
Because this is like for a 5-year period.
Yeah,
I mean, we could
yeah.
also change the time.
again,
frame.
it kind of goes to content. Staff is saying, hey, they can have up to 6 10-day periods. That's 60 days. That's 2 months of signage a year out of 12 months on a temporary banner. Whatever they want to put on it would be their choice. That's at least staff's position.
It sounds like he's fine.
Then I move staff.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so we got a motion by Lynn, second by Dave for, to move staff recommendation, which is denial of the requested special permit to allow the permanent banner sign for the daycare center, which would be affixed to the fence, is our understanding, but to allow approval for the requested special permit for a banner sign to be erected for not more than 6 10-day periods within any calendar year, and other staff recs therein. All those in favor of granting that requested special permit, but denial of the other requested special permit, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, I'll quit talking. Okay. Motion carries 5-0 to carry out the staff rec. Okay, Andy, we tried to give you something there, but I think as things continue to evolve there, perhaps you can come back and see us on some other more permanent things, maybe. Okay, keep up the good work in your community. You're welcome. Okay, that'll bring us to number 19, which is an exception request at 4232 East Madison Avenue.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, another garage request here.
It's Garage Month at Board of Adjustment.
It's on the dead-end segment of East Madison Avenue, the 4200 block, so very far east in the city, to get a sense for where we're talking about. They're asking to do a 30-foot by 40-foot garage in the rear yard with a height of 17 feet maximum. There's an existing garage that would get replaced as part of this proposal. They are of a size, I believe, where their rear yard maxes out the calculations, so they hit the 1,000 square foot maximum. They're wanting to go 200 square feet over that. This is the property here. You can see the existing garage to the left. Their sketch shows that they would place that further back and remove the garage in the foreground. The part I think that's concerning most to staff is the proposed material that they initially are proposing anyway, which is essentially a standing seam metal type material. Which does not really, from staff's perspective, fit into the character of the neighborhood. We do believe that they can meet the test for the exception for the area that they're requesting. However, we do want any accessory building to be constructed with materials that are compatible with the existing dwelling, including horizontal lap siding and asphalt shingles. So if you go back to the house here, we're talking about the narrow lap type siding material, whether it's vinyl, durable vinyl, cement board, fiber cement board, wood is not relevant. I mean, it's relevant that it's compatible with the neighborhood in terms of its character, that it's a durable material. But we do not want this design that's shown here with the vented or ribbed metal type surface, and we would want to see something more compatible in lieu of what they proposed. Any accessory dwelling should be constructed in compliance with applicable building codes, with issuance of all necessary permits by the Permit and Development Center, shall not be used as a dwelling unit, and shall not be used in association with a home-based business unless they come back with a separate special permit request. So again, we're pushing for the design to be compatible, given the scale of it being slightly larger than what you would normally be allowed. We do want to make sure we take steps to make sure that it's compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. This is the consent map.
Okay. And we've got a place of worship there to the northwest, is that correct?
Yeah, it's called International Church of Foursquare.
Okay.
Not sure, not familiar with that denomination.
I'm not myself, but that's okay. Okay.
And then, you know, there's some argument that there are some metal accessory buildings in the area. You know, this was developed in a more rural character, large lot, septic. So we're right on that boundary. The intent of the Des Moines zoning ordinance is to establish a character for our neighborhoods. So, you know, from that perspective, I would be cautious about comparing it to another kind of development pattern that we're not pushing for with our planned DSM.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions for Eric? All right. Seeing none. Applicant. This is actually going faster than it usually does. Just want to tell you. Not sure if you're self-employed or getting paid to be here, but okay. Good afternoon.
Okay, my name's John Watson, 4232 East Madison Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa, 50317. I don't really have a lot for you. I went to the city, asked them what I needed, what I could build. They told me I could build a pole barn. They told me I had to get engineered plans.
Yep.
They told me I could build 20% of my rear lot, which was 1,600 square feet. I knocked it down to 1,200, and they said, you get all that stuff, you get everything in line, bring it back to me, we'll give you your permit. I took engineered plans to them. I bought the building, which is sitting in my backyard,
Okay.
unconstructed. Did everything they asked me to, other than when I went to get the permit, they told me I had to pay $240 to come down and talk to you guys to see if I could go an extra 200 square feet.
Yeah.
Because then they told me that you had to have an acre to have the 1,600 or whatever, however big your rear yard was. So I filled out all the paperwork to come down here, and that's about where we sit.
Okay.
Thought I was doing everything right, and
Sure.
so now I got a $15,000 building sitting in my backyard, which is.
So you have any pictures of it or anything there? Your construction materials or?
Do I have any pictures of it?
Yeah, did you bring any
No.
pictures of your project or what you want to do? Okay.
No, I mean, the original garage was there. I mean,
Okay.
the building that I bought, I did give them.
So you've
I gave it to
already-
them,
yeah.
and I thought they were supposed to give it to you guys, all the engineered plans of what the building would look like.
Okay.
It's the same color as the house.
So nobody discussed the materials or anything, they just said, here's how big of a building you can build.
Yep, they said this is how big a building you could build. You have to have an engineer design it.
Right.
So I did that, so it would all be.
Footings and foundations.
So you went and bought
It'd
the
be-
kit and,
It's sitting on poles, so they make you buy like pads.
Right.
To set it on, and then you do rock, dirt,
Yeah.
so on, and then the concrete pad. The peak can be 17 feet above
Yep.
the floor.
Yep. Okay.
so you basically got all the components stacked up in your backyard.
Yes, I've got all the preformed trusses, everything stacked stacked there waiting.
I've been in your shoes where someone told me something that wasn't right and it
Yes.
cost me money.
I,
Is there any way to maybe pretty up, maybe add some windows or something to the
There's-
front of it to make it look?
so what it shows, it's got one 116 by 10-foot overhead door, one walk-in door, and then it's got a window to my neighbor to the west.
Okay.
And I
So
think,
like on the other side of this, where it's not showing in this picture,
yes, it'd be.
the window would be on the other
The
side.
doors, the little walk-in doors on the east side, the overhead doors south, and then the window will be on the west side.
You're having one window on the west side in the middle,
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
And then the trim, I mean, it's gonna have all the trim work around it.
What's the color of the siding?
Tan.
Tan,
it's
which is the
same-
house?
It's the same color as the house,
And what color's the roof gonna be?
the tan. The
And as well, so
the
it's
roof
one
is-
color for the whole thing?
Yeah, the roof on the house is a lightish tan color.
Okay,
too.
all
We
right.
bought the house foreclosed.
Sure.
And we actually lived just to the east of where we bought the house.
Right.
Which was, my fence line now is city, county.
Right.
And then,
Okay.
yes, they do have Morton buildings built on that street. There's several of them built back there.
Right. Yep. So when you went down to the city the first time, and I'm guessing, did you sketch out, or did they sketch out what you wanted
Yep,
to do?
yes.
Did they initial it, or sign off on it, or rubber stamp it, or anything at the time? Do you have
No.
a copy of that, or?
I do not have it with me.
Okay.
I mean, I've got, I went down there, they told me what I could build, how
Right.
big I could build it.
Right.
Told me that the engineered plans were only gonna be $250. They're like $1,500.
Right, right.
So,
Okay, okay. Because usually when we get into how it's going to look, a lot of that is if somebody wants some exceptions or variances, like you want to come and get something you normally can't get,
Yeah.
then we usually say, well, then let's have you do something that you normally might not have to do.
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of sometimes want to ask people to pretty it up. So in other words, you want something, well, then we want something in return.
Yeah.
Now, in a case like this, I'm kind of sitting here going, well, if you were told one thing and made a decision on it, that
Yeah.
kind of stinks.
I mean, I could put green shutters around the window.
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes a long way. I don't want to try to micromanage how you're doing things, but yeah, but that certainly has some impact. So, any other questions we've got for John? Okay, we might have some questions for staff too, so. All right, John, you can go ahead and sit down for a minute. Anybody else here to speak in support of the applicant? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, do we have any further questions for staff? I might have one question here. This is just me. I don't know who wants to answer this, but it sounds like John was told he could build the building at the size he initially wanted to. And I know when we don't have this in writing, that can be a difficult thing or anything to look at, but is it pretty clear that,
They never issued a permit for anything that would have been larger than the zoning would allow, so,
right, so zoning would allowed what, up to 1,000?
yes. So he could have the metal building that he wants up to 1,000
Right,
square feet. Right,
but it sounds like he ordered the building at 1,200 square feet.
yes.
thinking
So
he
he
could
ordered it
do-
without a permit in hand, apparently, so.
Right,
Yeah.
but he was thinking he was told he could build up to 1,200 then, potentially.
I can't speak to what anybody told
Right,
him.
right. And this isn't the first time we've run into this conundrum where the applicant says, well, this is what they told me at the desk, but they don't have it
He
in
may not have
writing.
told him how big his lot is either, you know? We
Right.
don't know what transpired there.
Sure, I've got you.
I think
I've got you.
in general, our technical staff know the requirements, and so.
Okay. And
you
I'm
know,
assuming that
If
that
they would have
do.
known all the information, they may have revealed that he
Yeah.
would have been limited in
Yeah.
the size that he could build.
If they had given him a building permit for the 1,200 without any conditions.
The
and
building
he
permit
slapped
was
it in,
issued with
yeah.
1,200 square foot, then, yeah, I'd say we have a problem.
Okay,
So,
all right, I got you.
It could be an instance like I was discussing with the group yesterday. Sometimes you only hear what
The part, yeah.
that makes sense to you, because if you don't do this all the time, you don't know what questions to ask
Right.
or what parts are important that they tell you.
Right,
So
yes. My
without
wife
writing-
accuses me of that all the time.
and he's correct. If he had an acre, he could build much larger. Otherwise, it's 20%, but there is the maximum cap of 1,000.
How large is his lot now?
What's that?
How large is his current lot now?
But the maximum cap is still 1,000.
I know, I'm just
regardless.
curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's.
But if
he's
he
under
calculated
acre,
it based on 20%, maybe he came up with 1,200 based on that.
Right.
What's
So,
200 square
as he had
feet?
indicated,
Right.
his
10 by 20.
20% on his was giving him up to 1,600 square feet.
Okay.
Which, so he's cut off
Oh, that's
the
where- yeah.
maximum cap.
Okay.
Okay.
His parcel is 11,400 square feet.
Okay.
So about a
That's a quarter.
fifth of an acre, quarter of an acre.
43, 560 or something, yeah.
Little
You're
over.
Okay.
Okay, so that was my question for Eric. I think I got that answered. Any other questions for staff? Okay. All right, let's go ahead, close public portion, then go to board deliberation.
So basically, we've got a building that's been purchased, that's 200 square feet bigger than it's supposed to be,
Yep.
and it's comprised of materials that are not compatible with what Des Moines says.
No, if it was 200 square feet smaller, he could build it, he wouldn't have to get that type of permission. He could build it, just the type of building he's building.
I'm just stating the obvious right now,
Yeah.
what we've got. I agree with you 100%.
yeah.
Because I'm saying, let's figure a solution out here.
Right,
He
right.
abuts to the county,
Yep, yeah.
Which means there's a bunch of buildings just to the east of him.
neighbors within eyeshot have got buildings like this
Yeah, yeah.
all over the place, and if it was 200, to your point, if it was 200 square foot smaller, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right. And staff is fine granting the exception for the size, and I'm not sure if staff knew he did or didn't have the building materials in hand, but if staff wants it to be compatible with the other structure, that's going to be hard to do with what he's got. So is there a way we could work something in where, to take you up on that, well, instead of one window, maybe he puts two in, spaces them out, and put some colored shutters on them or something. I'm not trying to make it too nitpicky.
Does that make
here.
you feel better if we
Well,
get him to put two windows in?
see,
I mean,
that's-
it's the
yeah.
same color as the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My thought right now is, build it.
Put it, if,
That's my opinion,
That's what I'd
Just
go
tell,
with
have
too.
him tell his neighbors to check
you know,
zoning
and
first.
if you guys want to move,
so,
An
yeah,
exception and-
I'll make a motion, let him do what he wants to do.
which would mean you'd be granting the exception but removing the staff condition
Number one.
number one, but that you, I would guess, maybe you could amend that, you'd like it to see constructed as generally submitted with his
Yeah.
site plan drawing.
If
match
he's
the
got all the
co- match the
materials,
color
I
of
don't,
the
I don't
house.
care if he has,
Yeah.
Yeah,
adds a window if he wants to, or
Okay.
if someone else would like to make a friendly amendment to that. I'm kind of like, hey, this
Okay.
is okay.
okay. Yeah, we appear to have lots of support
not-
or no concerns.
I'm not
Look
gonna,
at where he's at, you know.
I'm not gonna
he's
defend
got-
him against the city, whatever somebody said, I mean.
And he's going to tear the old garage down, which nobody else wanted to do.
The devil's in the details, so yeah, I'll make that.
So
I'll
Dave's
make
got a
that
motion.
I'll second that.
Is that clear enough for the record, Glenna?
Is that good, Glenn?
Okay. Okay, so we got a motion, a second, probably could have had a third. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay. Okay, yeah. The next time you got to come down for something, have them sign it in blood for you, so that. Yeah, well, yes.
Get your permit before you buy
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. For those who are in the audience as well as on TV, yes, always get your permit before you buy your materials, because then when you have a permit, you know it's signed, sealed,
Or
delivered.
if you make a phone call,
But
take
keep up the good
notes.
work, John.
All right.
All right, have a good evening.
I can
Okay.
go back after your lunch.
That'll bring us to our other item here, which is item 20. A variance request at 1102 East 9th Street in Des Moines.
Okay, item number 2 would allow for retention of a garage on a property that currently doesn't have a primary structure, such as a single-family dwelling. Subject property is located on the west side of East 9th Street, just north of the freeway, south of East University Avenue. You can see on this property, or on this map, that there's an existing accessory structure on the property. There was a single-family house here years ago, but it's been developed, so this has been a zoning violation. It's kind of flown under the radar for years. It wasn't until earlier this year when the person who bought the property in June wanted to make improvements to that garage to stabilize it by putting a new roof on. That's when it was realized that there's an accessory structure on the property but no single-family house. So he does need to, his two options would be either to immediately begin construction of a single-family house on the property or get this variance. And this sketch here just shows what a house would look like. I don't believe that the applicant has any intent of building a house in the near term, but he can answer that. Here's a photo that shows the existing garage. You can see it's concrete block walls, has the new roof on it that they put on earlier this year. Here's another angle.
Okay.
And then the consent map, we did have one card come back in support.
Go Roberta, okay.
So staff didn't believe that they had demonstrated the criteria necessary for granting the variance. We would prefer that they immediately begin, either remove the garage or begin construction of a single-family structure more immediately. So we have recommended denial. However, if the board is inclined to grant the variance, then we would recommend that the variance be for a temporary period up to 2 years, which would allow them 2 years to either build a single-family house or to tear the garage down.
So I'm going to wade in on this one right away. I know exactly where this garage is. I drive by it almost every day, and I was like, hey, somebody's fixing it up. That's cool. So, because I work down the street. So here's my concern. If the garage was already there, even though the house was demolished, we usually don't make people tear down an accessory structure, but I'm assuming, did the value of the repairs exceed a certain, the 60%, or? Because why would we ever make somebody tear down a building that already exists?
Because right now, it's zoned R160, which really only allows residential uses or churches and schools.
Right.
And so by having a accessory structure on a property without either a house, a church, or a use, then the primary use of the property becomes storage. And it's not storage for a use that's on the property, so then it becomes a non-permitted use of the property.
I'm kind of following you there.
I think what Mel was asking is, what's the distinction between this and a normal existing non-conforming use situation?
Yeah. Because Bert's saying it just is. Because the moment the house was gone.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the house was demolished, but it's been a zoning violation ever since that house was demolished.
Boy, that's a tough one.
And did he buy this property after the house was, after it was demolished? Put a roof on the garage, and then you guys went, whoa, time out. There's a building on this property. We didn't know it was there, and you can't do that. So you have to take this down or build a house.
I mean, that's when the city discovered there was a zoning violation there, so.
His option is take it down or build a house, and if you want to have that structure on here.
Right, because otherwise the primary use becomes storage, which is.
I got it.
Residential use.
Which I get that.
So I think to get to Nathan's question, I haven't analyzed this, so I may have a different opinion if I did, but it didn't start out as storage and then the house was torn down or begin as storage. It didn't begin as the commercial use.
Right.
It was a residential use. It never was a commercial. So now it doesn't
Now the
have
residential
a
went away.
non-conforming, right, because it never was non-conforming. I wanted to ask Bert a question about this, which maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that I had heard previously that the company that owns this lot and this garage also owns a business in the area, and so that furthers the point that it cannot be a non-residential use.
And so Kevin Whaler is the agent for the Dexter Corp, and you can see they also own the properties, commercial buildings to the north. And I think that's where their office is.
Okay.
And you can also see that somebody's using the property for parking of an RV as well.
Yes. Yeah. See, now that I kind of.
Maybe they're living there. They don't make it residential.
Well.
Is that not how it works?
Okay, so, and Bert, to the best of your knowledge, was any kind of building permit needed or taken out to facilitate the garage repair?
Yeah, they were required to get a permit to.
And did they?
And well, when they came in to apply for it, that's when the issue was.
Okay, so it was caught at that time, which is good, and we'll have to ask the applicant. I mean, did they go ahead and complete the repairs regardless?
I think. Are you familiar with that?
We'll talk to the applicant and come back to you on that.
Bert, would they have to get a permit to demolish the house?
Yeah, they would.
But you wouldn't make them demolish the garage at the same time?
I think now our standard procedures now do, but maybe when the house was demolished.
Yeah, and that's
10,
what I
20
can't
years ago,
recall
that
how
wasn't
long ago
the
that
protocol.
garage was removed. Because there's a nice mural that's, well, it's not even, it's how the house is painted. There's a house nearby with a lot of art on it. Yeah, drive right by it. Okay. Any other questions for Bert? What's your consent map show again, or did
Just
it?
that one card in support.
Okay, got it.
Roberta.
That's right, common sense, okay. All right, okay, let's let the applicant talk. Help fill us in. Fill in the gaps here.
Save the best for last.
Yeah,
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Whalert. I'm at 1102 East 9th Street in Des Moines. I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Sure.
But to get started right off the bat, I did purchase this property, which I think I'm going to use this map because it's a little better than mine. Maybe.
Your head's probably making it more focused.
What are you trying to say, Eric?
No,
Come on.
you're just too-
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whose head it is.
Okay, so I did purchase these two lots here, one at 1018 and one at 1016 East 9th. At the time of the purchase, these lots were unbuildable. They were too narrow, obviously.
Right.
Since then, I've gone to the Polk County Assessor's office
Excellent.
and had them combine this into one lot. So it's known as 1018 East 9th Street. 1016 doesn't exist. The property to the south of that with the nice mural was just demoed, I think, a couple days ago, 2 or 3 days
Yeah.
ago. So it's gone, that beautiful mural.
yeah, yeah.
So I do own other properties located up the street. I do own a nightclub called the Fremont on 1030 East 9th. And then the building across the street at 1104, which I do use as an office. But this structure was never intended to be used as any storage for my business at all or for any commercial use. But just to give you a bit of a brief history on this property, it was built in 1950, so it's been there ever since then, and it has been in poor condition. At one point, there was a family living in there, I guess, and I think that probably raised a lot of issues with somebody trying to live in a secondary structure. But I did repair the structure, and I installed a new roof on it this spring. I bought it in June. I've only had it since June, and all this stuff has happened between now and then.
Okay.
But I replaced the soffits on this place, the fascia, scraped all the peeling paint, repainted all the siding, cleaned out the garage. I filled up 2 40-yard dumpsters with the garbage left behind by these previous owners. The yard was always in a mess. I mean, it's a nuisance property. It has been in this neighborhood for, the past 30 years. It's been a nuisance property as far as I've been told by some of the other neighbors that have lived there. But I did contact zoning, and I did speak with Sue Ann, and she did give me some guidance on the property and told me that the property was actually on the nuisance list and was scheduled to be demoed.
Yep.
And that was in 2016, I think. I'm not sure if she remember that, but so she told me I did need to pull a permit for those items that I did fix. So I did go down to the zoning department and pulled the permit on 9/11. But then on 9/19, I had scheduled an inspection with Dan Adams with the Neighborhood Inspection Department, and he's the one that I think was dealing with the nuisance problem at the time. So I was told I need to get in touch with him. So I did have a meeting scheduled with him, and then he calls me that day and says, well, it's been canceled. You don't have to worry about it. They're taking it off the demo list. So I'm thinking to myself, this is good news. We're moving in the right direction. This is some good progress. But then on 9/24, I did get a municipal code violation for allowing this structure to exist without a primary structure. It's in violation of municipal code. So basically, this inspection was dated 9/17. On 9/20 was the date of the notice. I received it 9/24. So basically, this gave me 6 days to go and pull another permit and have the structure demolished or face a $750 civil infraction, which, just blew my mind, okay, I better get something done. So once again, I reached out to Sue Ann at the zoning office, and she basically kind of told me that I should probably submit a building plan for the site, and that kind of wanted to know what I wanted to do as far as moving forward. I think I left that somewhere else, but I did submit an actual site plan. Oh, here it is, sorry. This was just kind of a preliminary thing. I mean, I had no real idea as far as like square footage that I wanted to put on, but talking with the zoning guys, they said there's no real restrictions on as far as what square footage you could put on the property. So this is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, under 1,500 square feet.
Where did you get this plan? That looks.
This was right off the internet. You
It
know?
looks
I mean,
very cool and very
well,
vintage.
I like vintage. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it
yeah.
would
It's
probably a
fit-
vintage
fit
plan.
good in the neighborhood. And actually does, on the next page, allow,
Yeah.
like if you ever wanted to add on to this in the future, this gives you options to what it might look like. But,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know as far as the, you know, the lot is concerned, what
Sure.
you can actually.
The general
get to,
concept.
but yeah, that was kind of my plan, so.
Okay.
So at that point, I thought, you know, I don't have really a whole lot of options here. I have very few days to get anything done. So after talking with the zoning guys, they're like, you know, you can go in front of the board and get a variance. You can stop this civil infraction thing and, you know, move about your day. So, so I do agree that, you know, this property was a nuisance. It's not now. I don't necessarily agree with the staff's recommendation on tearing down this structure. I feel that it's just not really consistent with the spirit of the zoning ordinance. I would think that unique circumstances come up all the time where, you know, the commission can take note and, you know, rule in fairness on situations like this. But, you know, there are some things that I was kind of researching. You know, the fact that the property has been there since 1950 when it was built, and then the fact that it was allowed to remain after the primary structure was taken off or taken down. You know, you're looking at 68 years ago this place was built, and another, you know, 23 years ago that was left to be a standalone structure. Like I said, I'm not looking at like using it for commercial. I do want to build a property on it or a house, and I do have another option with this company that tore down the property next door. You know, they're looking for more square footage to build a low-income type house, and she did approach me about purchasing the property. We couldn't really come up with a amount that, you know, we both agreed on, but that is an option. But if you would bear with me one minute, I just want to read the Iowa Smart Planning Principles for the Iowa Code. If you're familiar with that, I'm sure you are. I want to read about revitalization, and Article 5 here talks about planning and zoning development and resource management should facilitate the revitalization and establishment of town centers, neighborhoods by promoting development that conserves land, protects historic resources, promotes pedestrian accessibility, and integrates different uses of the property. So remediation and reuse of existing site structures and infrastructures is preferred over new construction in undeveloped areas. I mean, that fits in perfect with me. I think that, you know, we're trying to reuse some of these existing structures and not just tear them down just to have to rebuild them again. You know, it is kind of a financial hardship on me. You know, I looked at what it would cost to tear this structure down, $30,000 to $40,000 for demolition and debris removal. Also, you know, only to have to rebuild this garage because I would want to put it back in its place, which I forgot to show these photos of this wonderful work I did all summer long fixing this garage up. This is the back side of the garage that looks to the alley. And of course, he did show the front of this.
Yep.
Mine doesn't include the trailer sitting next door, which is a temporary situation. It will be gone.
Okay.
I do apologize for this big tree shadow here, but you kind of
Nice photo, you're fine.
kind of get the idea what it looked like. But once again, back to this smart planning guide, I think that, you know, allowing the structure to remain and, you know, is better and efficient use of current infrastructure and structures, and not having to tear it down, I just think is, it seems counterintuitive to me. Not to mention that, you know, it seems unnecessary because, you know, we're going to tear this structure down, we're going to have to rebuild it, and then all that stuff ends up in the landfill when this is a perfectly good structure that can be accompanied to a nice house, and, you know, it only attracts more people to the neighborhood. You know, Capitol Park neighborhood and the existing neighborhood is not in such great shape at all. I mean, it's it needs help, I think. So I'm more happy to invest what money I have in that neighborhood. So I'd be more happy to answer any questions you guys have, and I appreciate your time.
So you would or are going to build a home on there?
I plan on it. I mean, that was something that I had in the back of my mind that, you know, eventually I would like to build a structure on this property.
So all you've done is rehab the existing building on there because it was an eyesore.
Right.
And it was full of 2 40-yard dumpsters worth of junk.
Right.
Okay.
Lots.
Do you have a
Nothing
time
worth
frame?
saving. I'm sorry?
Do you have a time frame for building?
This was just such kind of a rush thing. I never really got any kind of time frame set up, but obviously, you know, within 2 years would not be any kind of problem if that's the road I was going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I'd like to ask you a couple questions, please.
Sure.
Over there a little closer.
First, I just want to make sure that I understand. You showed 1 or 2 site plans, but just to clarify, those you pulled from the internet. There weren't anything that you actually planned for
Right.
this site specifically. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then when was it approximately that you learned that you would need to go through this process? You'd need to be here today?
When I went down to speak to the zoning office about this municipal code infraction, which was dated 9/24, so I think on September
Okay.
25th,
So-
I called.
So like a month ago?
Yeah, 30 days
Okay,
ago.
so you've had about 30 days to think about when you may want to sell this property or what purchase price or if you were to build there or anything of that nature. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Kevin, in looking at timelines, I'm just trying to add all this up here. Some repairs to a structure do not need a building permit, and some
Right.
do. And obviously, as we've seen today, some people build stuff and don't even get a permit.
Right.
But did you have a building permit to put in new eaves or new roof or anything like
I
that?
wasn't aware at the time when I started to put the new roof on it that I
Okay.
was required to
Okay.
to pull a permit because, you know, I've worked with contractors before and talked to a lot of them. They're
Sure.
like, you don't need a permit to replace a roof.
Well,
But
and the
after,
yeah.
after talking with Sue Ann and the guys down there, and said, well, if you get below the sheeting and all
Right.
that stuff, which clearly there was,
Yeah.
most of the sheeting was missing. And
If I remember right, there were complete, like,
Right,
huge
holes.
holes in that
Yep.
roof that you could pass, like, a small
Absolutely.
car through.
Yep,
Yeah, I was
absolutely.
surprised the roof was actually on it.
Right.
But the reason I ask, had you gone down there,
Yeah.
I would hope that at the permit center, then they would have said, well, I can't really issue you a building permit
Well,
to
that's what they
replace
told
your
me.
roof
Yeah.
because
Right.
it's now a non-conforming structure. So I just wanted to get that square as well.
Right.
And again, that's a lesson for everybody. Before you start
Sure.
tearing into something, pun intended, go check it out. But,
Right.
you know, I'm not saying I want to punish you for that, but I
Right.
just want to clarify how you would approach this, because hopefully those things get caught.
Yeah.
And then we got a time to pause and think about it. But in buying the property from square one, generally speaking, did you think, hey, yeah, I'd like to build a house here someday?
You know, not so much. I think originally
Okay.
when I purchased the property, I mean, I'm in the neighborhood every single day.
Sure,
You know,
I'm
you're
sure you
sitting
are.
there, You're
Yep,
driving by.
yep.
and I
I've
was
been down to
tired-
the Fremont
I was
before.
tired of looking at this place.
Right.
You know, I'm tired of, you know, the yard being, you know, all grown up. I'm tired of not scooping the sidewalks and you know,
Yep.
the place was an eyesore. It was a
Okay.
public nuisance and it did
Right.
need to be torn down.
Right.
But when I got to looking at it, it's like, this isn't a bad garage.
Block
It's a cinder
walls.
block, yeah,
Yep.
it's a sound structure. You couldn't move it anywhere though, because
Right.
it'd fall apart. I mean, you can't
Right.
pick up a cinder block structure and take it across town. So it did have good bones in it and, you know, the roof just needed to be replaced and a little TLC. After I started fixing it up and realized, you know, I can't have this structure here without a primary, that's when I decided
gotcha.
to start thinking about
I
building
gotcha.
a house there. So-
Sure. And maybe you could have talked to Caleb. If you don't want to build a house, he probably
Yeah.
would.
May buy a lot from
He may.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Anything else you want to add? Or any questions you'll
I don't have
take?
anything else.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and, you know, I tried to keep it
That's quite all
short
right.
because I think everybody wants to go home, so.
You've earned the right to be here.
So we're gonna leave those?
Yeah, we'll need to have those pictures. So what we'll do here for procedural,
You said it's supposed to be short.
anybody here to speak in support? Seeing none. Anybody here to speak in opposition?
It's one of those.
Okay, we'll just call it opposition then. Sue Ann?
Well, Chair, members of the board, I don't know if it's opposition.
Or clarification? or-
Clarification. This was declared a public nuisance in 17. The city got a decree 2/28 of 18.
Yeah. Okay,
this gentleman took title 625 of 18, so I don't know if he knew it was a public nuisance or not, but he should have known. It should have been revealed to him in the transfer of title. I don't know if they did a title search or not. It would have shown up on the title search, so I don't know if they
That
just
would be
did
my
a
question.
quick claim deed and he
Okay.
took it over. If he would have pulled permits, it would have been flagged at the permit department that there's some other zoning issues here.
Okay.
Daniel is not a zoning inspector. He's a housing inspector and does the public nuisance. I don't have any problem with it standing there for a period of time as long as there's a house built and that's the end result. I told him when he called me on the phone about the nuisance, I said, you're probably, when you go down to pull a permit for the repairs you did, you're probably going to get a notice because there's a zoning violation here too. So I tried to give him a heads up that could not stand there as an accessory structure without a primary. I don't have any problem working out a solution as long as it doesn't stand there for the next 2 years and then still nothing's happened to get a primary structure on this site. So we can work out the legal angles as long as there's some sort of an agreement as to when this is going to come to completion.
Okay. All right. So you're in support of, obviously, I would guess, the staff recommendation then. Deny the requested variance, but that we, at the same time, we could also put forward a temporary variance to allow it to remain for 2 years?
Or whatever the board thinks is.
Yeah, right, applicable.
As long as there's a sunset date on some structure being up, you're okay
Right.
with it, as long as that's
A
in a
reasonable
reasonable
date.
period of time.
Yeah, obviously he's put money into that.
Yeah.
It's a zoning violation as it stands, and we have to
Yeah.
rectify it in
Yep.
some way.
Right.
And the easiest way to do it is to get a primary structure on there.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
And
combine the lots or do whatever you need to do to get a primary structure there.
Well, it sounds
Okay.
like there's some options there, maybe.
All right.
With the neighbors going.
So,
All right.
and I don't know if he's just gotten the notice, or I don't think they filed a suit, have they? Do you just have a notice of violation from the city?
Yeah. Yeah, so they're holding off till we make a
Depending
decision.
on what the board decides,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's fair.
All right.
I mean, otherwise, if he wants to use it commercially, he needs to rezone, attempt to rezone. and
We
then come in
understand
for
that. Yep.
A special.
Yeah, and the
use.
clarification
I mean,
did
there's-
help from early on that, even if a garage just sits there, well, suddenly somebody stores, 10 vehicles in, on, or around it, well, that's not really residential use anymore. So I get the
Correct.
principle.
Right.
Yeah.
Lives in it, yeah.
Yeah, John caught that. Okay. Okay, all right, Kevin caught that. All right, thank you, Sue Ann. Okay, Kevin, you've got if you want to, you can step up to say anything else you want since Sue Ann, but if not, I think we kind of get where everybody's at. Okay. Okay. Which is good to hear. She is easy to work with, but she's got her job to do, and that's the regulations, so. Okay, so we'll close public portion, then go to board deliberation.
I think, we should give him the variance that we, that's kind of suggested here, give him up to 2 years. And I don't know if we need a whole 2 years to commence issuance of the decision, but maybe a year to start something. Or, I don't know, I mean, because
I just,
time is of the essence when you see a vacant house and people are going to start taking it over.
but it does take financing and planning and et cetera. I'd probably say that he needs to take out a building permit within 2 years. And I think that's the intent of the minor suggestion, as staff put it here. Construction being commenced, to me, if somebody takes out a building permit, I think that would count.
You can pull out a building permit and not start for.
Oh, for how long?
180 days.
How
So
many?
I think it's 180 days.
That's
so,
6 months.
I mean, if.
Okay.
Just keep
We say
that in
pull
mind.
a permit and start construction within 2 years.
Well, wait, if right now it says construction is commenced,
And-
Mel was just reading that to say building permit, but it sounds like that wouldn't not be read to be,
Right.
to be just pulling a
Right,
building
yeah,
permit.
Yeah,
So
because I
I
could pull a
think,
building permit and sit on it for another 6
Yeah,
months.
so it says that you have to start building within
Okay.
2 years, so.
I don't want to make it more complicated. If everybody feels like within 2 years, you either, kind of the old phrase, you fish or you cut bait. So you either get the house going in 2 years would be the intent here, or you've sold it and the next person understands that.
Or demolished it.
Yeah, or you can demolish it.
Here.
Right.
It says right here, the construction new family.
Yeah, yeah, it shall either be demolished or moved to compliant location, so.
So I
yeah.
move those recommendations.
So in order to do that, can we just do that in one motion?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So Lynn's motioning staff recommendation, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, is that clear? Because the staff.
For the temporary
Is that clear enough?
So the staff recommendation
That's kinda what
has
I
to be
asked.
temporary with the conditions.
Okay, because it says should the board, because the staff recommendation is to deny it.
All
And
right.
it says should the board, we
That's kind of why I asked.
recommend those
yes.
things. So I think,
So you're making a motion to grant a variance for a temporary period of 2 years.
with the conditions listed out in number 1 and 2.
Okay, all right.
To make
That's
it
the
very
latest and
specific.
best on the record. Okay, I think that's clear. Motion by Lynn, was there a second by Cindy? Okay, all those in favor of granting the temporary variance, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Okay. We did the best we could for you on that one. Keep investing in that Capitol Park neighborhood. That's a turn-of-the-century neighborhood. I think it's got plenty of potential. It just needs tip the balance in the right direction, and you're helping to do that. Thank you. Okay, other business we need to do, Mr. Secretary?
Yeah, the draft of the 2019 meeting schedule's up on the screen. All meetings are the fourth Wednesday of the month, except for November and December would be the third Wednesday of the month.
And even for our current
For
calendar,
our current calendar, the November meeting's actually the fourth Wednesday of the month. So
Okay.
next month, it'll be November 28th.
okay, but for December, it will be the third on that. Okay, so folks, keep that in mind for your personal schedules. Yes, okay. Excellent. Okay, old business, we need to approve minutes of the last meeting, those who were there.
And you actually need to make a motion.
Oh, we need to make a motion to approve that. Is there a motion to approve the proposed 2019 Board
So
of
moved.
Adjustment schedule? Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Same for the minutes of last meeting. If you're here last month, any comments or a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. All those in favor who were here last month, raise your right hand and say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 4-0 vote. Got it, Bert? Okay, this hearing is adjourned.
All right, good job, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
well, garage month.
Garage month, that's right.